The frozen mountains swallowed her scream. Above, the men who pushed her off the cliff were already turning away, their boots crunching through fresh snow as if she'd never existed. Sergeant Elena Voss hit rock 40 feet down, ribs cracking, ankle shattering, darkness closing in like a fist. They called her paranoid, unstable, a liability. So they erased her. But as the blizzard buried her alive in that black crevice, her rifle still clutched in numb fingers, Elena saw what they couldn't: enemy shadows moving through the valley below. The attack she'd warned about was real, and now she had a choice: die quietly like they wanted, or become the ghost that saves them all. If you're watching this, don't scroll away. Stay until the very end to see how one impossible shot changed everything. Drop a like, leave a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. You won't believe what happens next. Black Hollow Pass wasn't on any tourist map. It existed only in classified briefings and the nightmares of soldiers who'd been stationed there during the frozen months. The outpost clung to a ridge like a scar: 12 prefab structures, 2 communication towers, and a perimeter that meant nothing when the fog rolled in thick enough to taste. December wind came down from the peaks with teeth, slicing through every gap in your gear, reminding you that nature didn't care about your mission or your flag. Elena Voss had been there 6 weeks. It felt like 6 years. She moved through the morning routine with mechanical precision. Weapons check at 0530, perimeter walk at 0600, range time at 0700 if the weather allowed. Her M110 semi-automatic sniper rifle, she called it Grace, though she'd never told anyone that, was cleaner than anything else in camp. While other soldiers let frost build up on their optics, Elena's scope was immaculate. While they complained about the cold making their fingers stiff, she practiced trigger pulls until the motion was automatic, conscious thought removed from the equation. The other scouts noticed. They just didn't respect it. "There she goes again," Corporal Davis muttered as Elena passed the mess tent, rifle case slung across her back. "Little Miss Perfect with her little perfect gun." Specialist Chen snorted into his coffee. "Heard she sleeps with that thing. Probably the only thing that'll sleep with her." The laughter followed her across the compound. Elena didn't turn around. She'd learned that responding only made it worse. In her first week, she'd tried defending herself, tried explaining that equipment maintenance wasn't obsession, it was survival. They twisted every word, made her sound neurotic, like she was proving their point just by caring. So now she stayed quiet. Did her job, stayed out of their way. But staying out of their way was getting harder. The previous mission, Operation Broken Echo, had ended 3 weeks ago. Officially, it was a success. Insurgent cell neutralized, intelligence recovered, all personnel returned safely. Unofficially, it had been a disaster held together by luck and Elena's shooting. The after-action report said otherwise. According to Lieutenant Marks, the team lead, Elena had displayed poor judgment under pressure and failed to follow established protocols. Never mind that her poor judgment had spotted the ambush before it triggered. Never mind that her protocol violation was the shot that dropped the sniper who had Marks in his crosshairs. She'd saved his life. He'd written her up for insubordination. "You don't take initiative," Captain Driscoll had told her during the formal review, his voice flat, eyes never quite meeting hers. "You take control. There's a difference." "Sir." I called out the threat. Lieutenant Marks didn't respond. "I had 3 seconds to—" "You had 3 seconds to trust your team lead," Driscoll cut her off. "Instead, you went rogue. That's not how we operate, Sergeant." The reprimand went in her file. The truth went nowhere. And ever since, the hostility had sharpened from general dismissal into something colder, more intentional. They didn't just ignore her anymore. They isolated her. During mission briefs, her tactical input was met with eye rolls. During training exercises, she was partnered with the least experienced soldiers or left out entirely. In the mess hall, conversations died when she approached. She was a ghost before she ever fell off that cliff. December 24th arrived with steel-gray skies and a wind that made the communication towers groan. Someone had strung up Christmas lights along the mess tent, cheap-colored bulbs that flickered against the canvas, casting sickly red and green shadows across the snow. A few soldiers wore Santa hats, ironically. Someone had jury-rigged a speaker to play Jingle Bells on a static-filled loop. Elena stood at the eastern perimeter, scanning the valley below through her spotting scope. The wind cut through her thermal jacket like it wasn't there. Her breath crystallized instantly, tiny ice particles catching the morning light. The valley was wrong. She couldn't explain it in words that would satisfy Captain Driscoll or Lieutenant Marks. There was no single piece of evidence, no smoking gun, just absence. For 3 days, the usual patterns had disappeared. The shepherds who normally moved their flocks through the lower meadows, gone. The smoke from the village cook fires that typically rose in thin columns at dawn, absent. Even the ravens that nested in the cliff face had abandoned their roosts. Nature didn't evacuate for no reason. Elena marked the observation in her patrol log, noting wind direction, visibility, temperature, and the specific details of what she wasn't seeing. Then she headed back to report. Captain Driscoll was in the command tent, hunched over a field table covered in maps and supply requisitions. He didn't look up when Elena entered. "Sir, I need to report a tactical concern." "Make it quick, Voss. I've got a logistics nightmare and about 4 hours to solve it before division starts asking questions." "The valley's gone quiet. No civilian movement for 72 hours, no animal activity, no—" "It's winter," Driscoll said, still not looking up. "It's quiet because it's cold. People stay inside." "Sir, this isn't normal quiet. This is cleared out quiet. The kind that happens before—" Now he looked up. His eyes were tired, irritated. "Before what, Sergeant? Before an attack you've somehow predicted with your magic powers." "Sir, I'm just saying the pattern is that you see threats that aren't there," Driscoll said. "Just like on Broken Echo. Just like every time you decide your judgment is better than your commanding officers." Elena felt her jaw tighten. "With respect, sir, Broken Echo had a confirmed failure of discipline," Driscoll then interrupted. "Your discipline. I've got your psych eval here somewhere." He shuffled through papers. "Dr. Reyes noted hypervigilance and trust issues. Those are red flags, Voss, not tactical insight. I'm not imagining this." "Then show me something real. Show me movement. Show me communications chatter. Show me literally anything other than your gut feeling, and I'll take it seriously." He went back to his paperwork. "Until then, I've got actual problems to deal with." Dismissed. Elena stood there for 3 seconds longer than she should have. Then she turned and left before she said something that would end her career faster than it was already ending. The mess tent was packed for the holiday meal. Someone had actually managed to procure turkey, probably from the same supply chain that was giving Driscoll his logistics nightmare. The mood was almost festive, soldiers laughing too loud, telling stories that got bigger with each retelling. Elena took her tray to the corner table, ate alone, watched. Across the tent, Lieutenant Marks was holding court with the scout team, Davis, Chen, Morrison, and Kowalski. They were passing around a flask, toasting something. Every few seconds, one of them would glance in Elena's direction, then lean in to whisper. She knew what was coming. She could feel it building like pressure before a storm. At 1900 hours, it broke. "Voss?" Lieutenant Marks appeared at her table, flanked by Davis and Chen. His breath smelled like whiskey. "Need to talk to you, outside." It wasn't a request. Elena followed them out into the dark. Snow was falling again, thick flakes that dissolved on contact with her skin. The Christmas lights cast long shadows across the compound. Somewhere, someone was still playing that broken version of Jingle Bells. Marks led them to the eastern perimeter, near the cliff edge where the ground dropped away into nothing. The wind was stronger here, unobstructed, howling. "We've been talking," Marks said, turning to face her. "The team, we've got concerns. Concerns. About your stability." He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. "About whether you're fit for duty." Elena's hand instinctively moved toward her sidearm, then stopped. She forced herself to stay calm. "I'm fit for duty, sir." "See, that's the thing." Davis stepped closer, crowding her space. "You don't sound fit. You sound paranoid. Seeing threats that aren't there, making us all look bad with your constant warnings and—" "The valley is clear," Elena said quietly. "No movement, no civilians. That's not paranoia. That's reconnaissance." "That's you trying to be special," Chen shot back. "Trying to prove you belong here when everyone knows you don't." The truth of it hung in the frozen air between them. "I've done my job," Elena said. "Every mission, every patrol. You've been a problem since day one." Marks cut her off, always questioning, always second-guessing. "You know what we call soldiers like you? Liabilities. People who get their teams killed because they can't follow simple orders. I saved your life on Broken Echo. The words came out harder than she intended. Mark's expression darkened. You took an unauthorized shot that could have compromised the entire operation. The fact that it worked out doesn't make it right. He stepped closer. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about skill, it's about trust. And none of us trust you. Then transfer me. Put me somewhere else. Oh, we've discussed that, Mark said. But here's the problem. You've got this nasty habit of being right just often enough that it looks bad when we try to get rid of you officially. So we're doing this the other way. Elena's heart kicked up. What other way? The way where you realize you're not wanted and you leave on your own. Davis smiled. It wasn't friendly. The way where you have a little accident, get hurt just bad enough to need a medical discharge. Nothing fatal, just career ending. They were surrounding her now, 3 of them, her back to the cliff. Elena's training kicked in. Assess, calculate, respond. She was outnumbered, but better trained. Davis was drunk and sloppy. Chen was fast but light. Marks was the real threat, sober enough to be deliberate. But fighting them meant court-martial, meant everything they were already accusing her of being. You don't want to do this, she said quietly. Actually, Marks replied, I really do. He moved fast, faster than she expected from someone who'd been drinking. His hand shot out, grabbing for her shoulder. Elena twisted away, but Chen was already there, catching her other arm. She drove her elbow back into his ribs, heard him grunt, but Davis was on her now too, his weight crashing into her from the side. The cliff edge was right there. She saw it coming, saw Mark's boot rising, saw the calculation in his eyes, just hard enough, just the right angle. Wait, she started to say. His boot caught her center mass, and then she was falling, time fractured into pieces. The first impact, her shoulder against rock, something cracking, spinning. The second impact, her head, stars exploding behind her eyes, spinning. The third impact, her ankle, white-hot pain that turned her vision gray, then stillness. Elena lay in the snow, unable to move, unable to breathe. Above her she could hear voices, muffled, distant, like they were speaking underwater. See her? Too dark. Just leave. The voices faded, boots crunching through snow, moving away. They were leaving her. Elena tried to call out, but her lungs wouldn't work. Tried to move, but her body was done taking orders. The cold was already seeping in, that particular Arctic cold that didn't just freeze you, it erased you, made you part of the mountain. Help me, she thought, but the words never made it to her mouth. The snow kept falling. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Pain. Everywhere. Specific and general, sharp and dull, present and distant, all at once. Cold. The kind that had already moved past discomfort into something clinical, biological systems shutting down in order of priority. Dark. Not just absence of light, but presence of dark, thick and textured, pressing in from all sides. Elena's first coherent thought was, I'm alive. Her second thought was, that might not be good news. She was wedged in a narrow crevice, walls of rock and ice on either side. Above, maybe 30 feet up, she could see a sliver of sky, still dark, but lighter than where she was. Snow was falling through the gap, accumulating on her chest. She tried to move her left leg. Immediate, screaming feedback told her that was a mistake. Broken ankle, maybe worse. Her ribs sent similar messages when she tried to breathe too deep. Her right shoulder felt wrong, disconnected, probably dislocated. But her arms worked. Her right hand could still make a fist. And somehow, impossibly, her rifle had fallen with her. It lay half buried in snow 2 feet away, the sling tangled around a jutting rock. Elena reached for it with her good arm, fingers numb, moving more on muscle memory than actual sensation. She pulled the weapon close, checked it with the mechanical efficiency of 10,000 repetitions. Barrel clear, optics intact, bolt functioning. Somehow, Grace had survived the fall better than she had. Magazine check, 18 rounds. That was it. Her full combat load was in her pack, which was still up on the ridge with the men who'd tried to kill her. 18 rounds. No radio, that had torn free during the fall. No flares, no medical kit. Just her rifle, her sidearm with 1 magazine, and a body that was already starting to fail. She should have been panicking, should have been crying, screaming, begging the universe for a miracle. Instead, she felt something colder settle into her chest, something that had been building for weeks under the weight of dismissal and isolation and gaslighting. Clarity. If she was going to die here, she'd die doing her job. Not because they deserved it, not because she owed them anything, but because she was Sergeant Elena Voss, and that meant something even if they couldn't see it. She pulled herself into a position where she could brace against the rock wall, ignoring the grinding sensation in her ribs, positioned her rifle, steadied her breathing despite the pain, and looked down into the valley. Dawn was still 2 hours away, but the snow was reflecting enough ambient light for Elena to make out shapes. She glassed the terrain methodically, sector by sector, the way she'd been trained. At first, nothing, just white landscape, dark trees, the natural shadows of a winter valley. Then, movement. She adjusted her scope, dialed for distance and elevation, held her breath despite the cost. There, 12 figures moving in tactical formation through the tree line, maybe 800 meters out. They were good, spacing correct, movement disciplined, someone who knew what they were doing, but good wasn't invisible, not to someone who'd spent 10 years learning to see what others missed. Elena's blood went cold for reasons that had nothing to do with the temperature. She counted again. Confirmed. Shifted her angle to scan further south. More movement. Another squad, this one larger, 15, maybe 20 personnel. They were converging on the outpost from two directions, using the terrain for concealment, timing their movement with the wind to mask sound. This wasn't a probe. This was a coordinated assault. Everything she'd warned about, everything they'd dismissed as paranoia. It was happening right now, and the people on the ridge had no idea. Elena checked her watch, 0437, shift change in 23 minutes. That's when they'd be most vulnerable. Half the guards rotating off, new guards still getting oriented, everyone cold and tired and just wanting their watch to end. The enemy knew it too. They were timing their approach to hit that exact window. She had to warn them. But warn them how? Her radio was gone. She couldn't climb. Not with her ankle. She couldn't even stand. She was 40 feet down in a crevice that might as well be on another planet as far as the outpost was concerned. All she had was 18 rounds and the angle they couldn't see. Elena made her decision in the space between heartbeats. If she couldn't warn them with words, she'd warn them with fire. The next 90 minutes were an exercise in controlled agony. Elena worked systematically despite the cold eating through her core. First, stabilize her position. She used her knife to chip handholds in the ice, creating a stable shooting platform. Every movement sent fresh pain through her ribs, but she compartmentalized it, filed it away in a mental box labeled "Deal with later." Second, range estimation. She didn't have her laser rangefinder that was in her pack with everything else useful, so she relied on the old methods. Mil dots in her scope, known reference sizes, the math she could do in her sleep even with her brain going hypothermic. Target 1. The machine gun team setting up on the southern ridge. Range, 847 meters. Wind, gusting northeast at 12 to 15 miles per hour. Elevation, favorable, shooting down at approximately 30 degrees. Target 2. The squad leader coordinating movement near the creek bed. Range, 763 meters. More exposed but mobile. Harder shot. Target 3. The communications specialist with the radio pack. Range, 891 meters. Extreme distance for the M11, but possible. Essential target if she wanted to prevent them from calling for reinforcements. She mapped it all out in her head, built the engagement sequence. Priority targets first, the ones that would cause maximum disruption. Then systematic suppression, buying time for the outpost to wake up and respond. 18 rounds. Maybe 20 targets minimum. The math wasn't good, but the math never was. Elena settled into her position and became still. Snow accumulated on her shoulders, her helmet, the barrel of her rifle. She let it. Camouflage was camouflage. Through her scope, she watched the enemy advance, watched them check corners, signal each other, move with the confidence of people who thought they had surprise on their side. You did, she thought. Until you didn't. At 0459, the outpost lights flickered, generators cycling for shift change. At 0500, the enemy made their final approach. At 0501, Elena Voss stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. The machine gunner died without knowing why. One second he was setting up his M24, adjusting the tripod legs for optimal field of fire. The next second, 168 grains of copper-jacketed lead removed the top of his skull at 2,650 feet per second. The suppressor on Elena's rifle reduced the crack to something that got lost in the wind. The loader looked up, confused, still holding the ammunition belt, tried to process why his gunner was falling, didn't have time to finish the thought. Elena's second round caught him in the chest. Immediately, the enemy formation collapsed into chaos. Soldiers dropped, searching for cover, trying to identify the threat. Officers started shouting. Hand signals went up. Contact, contact, unknown position. They were looking in the wrong direction, because the rules said the threat came from the outpost. The threat came from elevated defensive positions, from machine gun nests and mortar teams. The threat didn't come from a broken scout bleeding out in a crevice they didn't even know existed. Elena worked the bolt, smooth and fast. Found her next target. The squad leader was yelling into his radio, trying to coordinate a response. Elena put a round through the radio first, sparks and plastic fragments, then adjusted 6 inches left and took him in the throat. 3 down. 15 rounds left. Now the outpost was waking up. She could hear the alarm, a mechanical siren that sounded like the end of the world. Could see figures running between tents, grabbing weapons, trying to understand what was happening. But they were still too slow. The enemy was already breaching the wire. Elena shifted targets. Found a demo specialist moving toward the generator housing with a satchel charge. Range, 654 meters. Wind, 14 miles per hour, quartering left. She held 2 mils right of center mass. Exhaled, squeezed. The specialist dropped. The satchel charge tumbled free, landing in snow. Inert. For now. Above her, on the ridge, she could hear American voices shouting, "Contact south. Where's it coming from? Can't see shit!" They couldn't see shit because they weren't looking down, weren't looking at the impossible angle where their disposable scout had become their guardian angel. Elena kept shooting. By the 7th round, the enemy had figured out something was very wrong. Their assault was supposed to be surgical, hit fast, hit hard, collapse before effective resistance could form. Instead, their key personnel kept dying from an unknown position, and their entire tactical advantage was evaporating. An officer, captain's insignia visible on his winter gear, tried to rally them. He was good, Elena had to admit. Kept his head while everyone else was losing theirs. Started directing fire in a disciplined pattern, trying to suppress likely sniper positions. All the wrong positions. Elena tracked him through her scope. He was standing near a partially destroyed comm shelter, using it for cover while he coordinated his troops. Smart, cautious. Exactly the kind of leader who could turn this around if she let him. She didn't let him. Range, 712 meters. Wind, holding steady at 13 miles per hour. Partial concealment. She could see his head and shoulders, but his torso was protected by the concrete wall. Headshot. Had to be. Elena's hands were going numb. She could barely feel the trigger anymore, was operating on muscle memory and prayer. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges, not good, her body shutting down, core temperature dropping into dangerous territory. She had maybe 10 minutes before her fine motor control failed completely. This shot needed to count. She settled the crosshairs on the officer's temple, watched his pattern. He kept popping up to observe, then ducking down to issue orders. Up, down, up, down. Rhythm. On his third pop-up, Elena fired. The officer's head snapped back, his body crumpled, and just like that, the enemy assault lost its backbone. Confusion spread like a disease. Without their commander, without their key specialists, the carefully planned attack became a mob of scared soldiers taking fire from a ghost. Some tried to press forward, some tried to retreat. Nobody could agree on what the hell was happening. Elena gave them more reasons to run. Round 8, the forward observer calling for mortar support, dead before the coordinates left his mouth. Round 9, the breacher trying to blow the main gate. He died clutching his throat, blood spraying across white snow. Round 10, a soldier who'd gotten too close to the fuel depot, probably planning to turn it into a secondary explosion. Elena's bullet sent him sprawling away from the drums. 10 rounds gone. 8 remaining. The enemy was breaking. But then she saw him. Lieutenant Marks. He was pinned down behind a cargo container, two enemy soldiers advancing on his position from opposite sides. He'd lost his rifle. She could see it lying in the snow 15 feet away. All he had was his sidearm, and from the way he was fumbling with it, probably not enough ammunition to matter. The men who'd pushed her off the cliff 40 feet down were going to die in the next 30 seconds if she did nothing. Elena's crosshairs found the first attacker. Easy shot, 520 meters, minimal wind. She could take him, swing right, take his partner before either realized their world had changed. Her finger rested on the trigger. Every rational thought said, let him die. He tried to kill you. He destroyed your career. He left you for dead in a frozen crevice. Let the universe balance its scales. But underneath that, quieter but stronger, you're not him. You're not any of them. You're better. Elena made her choice. She fired. The first attacker's head exploded. His partner froze, trying to process, trying to understand. That hesitation cost him everything. Elena's follow-up shot caught him center mass. Marks looked around wildly, searching for his savior, unable to comprehend how he'd just survived the impossible. Elena was already moving to her next target. No time for gratitude, no time for irony, just the mission. 7 rounds left. At 05:17, the battle should have been over. The enemy was routed, their command structure destroyed, their assault turned into a panicked retreat. American forces were establishing a perimeter, calling for air support, securing the compound. But wars don't end cleanly. Through her scope, Elena spotted the enemy commander, the actual commander, not the captain she'd killed earlier, trying to rally his troops near the tree line. He was older, weathered, the kind of soldier who'd seen enough battles to know when one was lost. He wasn't trying to win anymore. He was trying to organize a fighting withdrawal, get his people out alive, and he was good at it. Already the scattered enemy forces were beginning to cohere around his position, forming up for a disciplined retreat that would let them live to fight another day. Elena tracked him. Range, 1,247 meters. Wind, gusting hard now, 18 to 22 miles per hour, variable direction. Her scope's maximum effective range was 800 meters. Beyond that was territory for .50 caliber weapons, not semi-auto 7.62. This was an impossible shot, but impossible had stopped meaning what it used to mean. Elena checked her position, adjusted her scope to maximum magnification, watched the wind through the falling snow, reading it like a language only she spoke. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore, could barely see straight. Her body was failing, but her training wasn't. She read the air currents. The way snow swirled near the ground meant lower-level wind from the east. The way it streaked horizontally at 800 meters meant mid-level wind from the northeast. At the target's position, she estimated 16 miles per hour, quartering right. Maybe. If she was wrong, she'd waste a round they might still need. If she was right, she'd end it. Elena did the math in her head. Bullet drop at that distance was approximately 312 inches. Wind drift was, she calculated, recalculated. Let instinct fill in the gaps that cold-numbed cognition couldn't process. Hold 8 mils high, 6 mils right. Pray the wind held steady for the 3 seconds her bullet would take to travel. The commander was moving. 60 seconds and he'd be gone into the trees, beyond any possible engagement. Elena settled into her position, made her body stone, made her breathing glass, made everything except the shot disappear. Exhaled. Held. Squeezed. The rifle kicked. The round flew. For 3 eternal seconds, physics and faith wrestled in the air. Then the commander fell. The enemy retreat became a rout. Without their leader, the organized withdrawal collapsed into every man for himself panic. Soldiers scattered into the woods, abandoning equipment, abandoning wounded, just running. But 3 stayed behind. Elena spotted them moving along the western ridge, trying to flank around to the outpost's vulnerable rear. They thought they were being clever, using the chaos as cover. Elena tracked them. 2 rounds left, 3 targets. The math didn't work, unless she changed the equation. She glassed their route, saw the fuel drums, old diesel storage that the outpost had been meaning to relocate but never got around to. The enemy soldiers were moving right past them. One of the drums was leaking. She could see the dark stain spreading through the snow. Elena shifted her aim, not at the men, at the fuel. Distance, 673 meters. Target, approximately 18 inches in diameter. Wind, holding at 15 miles per hour. If she missed, she'd waste one of her last 2 rounds, and 3 enemy combatants would hit the outpost from behind. If she hit it and nothing happened, same result. If she hit it and it ignited, Elena fired. For 1 terrible second, nothing. The round punched through the drum, diesel sprayed, then whoomp! Fire bloomed across the snow like a living thing. The leaking diesel became a river of flame, spreading faster than the soldiers could run. One of them was caught directly, his screams cutting through the morning air. The other 2 ran, away from the outpost, away from the fight, just away. The western flank was secure, 1 round left. Above, on the ridge, someone finally understood. "Oh my God," she heard a voice say. "Morrison," she thought. "Oh my God, it's her, it's Voss, she's down there." The realization spread like fire. Impossible. She's been shooting this whole time. Get a rope. Get a fucking rope right now. Lieutenant Mark's voice cut through the chaos. "Voss, Elena, can you hear me?" She could, but answering would take energy she didn't have. Her vision was going gray. Her body had stopped shivering. That was bad, she knew. Meant hypothermia was moving into the dangerous stages. Just a little longer, just had to hold on a little longer. Movement in her peripheral vision. She swung her scope left, searching. There, one last enemy soldier, young, scared, crawling through the snow with a rifle he probably didn't know how to use. He was heading toward a pile of equipment, probably looking for anything that could help him escape. The equipment pile included American wounded. Elena's last round was already chambered. Her hands were numb blocks of ice. Her vision was tunneling, but the shot was only 340 meters. Close range. Easy. Except her body was done. Her fingers wouldn't respond. The crosshairs wandered across her scope like they had their own agenda. She tried to steady herself, felt the world tilting, tasted copper in her mouth. "Come on," she told herself. "One more. Just one more." The young soldier reached the equipment pile, saw the wounded American, raised his rifle. Elena fired. The rifle fell from hands that could no longer hold it. The soldier stayed down. The wounded American stayed alive. Grace's bolt locked back. Empty. Elena Voss had done her job with 18 rounds and a broken body, had protected people who'd tried to erase her, had proved every single person wrong about who she was and what she was worth. Now the cost came due. The adrenaline that had kept her functioning drained away like water through a sieve. The cold she'd been compartmentalizing rushed back in. Her vision faded to a pinpoint, then to nothing. Above, voices shouted her name. Ropes dropped. Hands reached. But she was already falling into a different kind of dark. "Got her!" "Jesus Christ, she's frozen!" "Pulse! I've got a pulse!" Fragments of consciousness. Hands lifting her. Pain that seemed distant, happening to someone else's body. The sensation of movement, rising. The crevice walls sliding past. Someone was crying. Maybe Morrison. Maybe her. Then she was on the ridge, snow under her back, faces above her swimming in and out of focus. The faces that had dismissed her, mocked her, pushed her toward death. Now they were trying to save her life. "Stay with us, Voss." "Medic! Where's the fucking medic?" "Elena! Elena, can you hear me?" She could. But speaking seemed impossible. Everything seemed impossible except the cold, which was very real and very close. Then Mark's face right above hers, and something she'd never seen there before. Tears. "I'm sorry," he was saying, over and over. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." Too late, she wanted to say. You're too late. But maybe not. Maybe this was what change looked like. Maybe people only learned when the cost became real. A thermal blanket wrapped around her, hands checking her wounds, radio chatter coordinating medevac. She'd survived. Against every odd, every betrayal, every impossibility, she'd survived. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness finally claimed her was the sun rising over Black Hollow Pass, turning the blood-stained snow to gold. And for the first time in 6 weeks, Elena Voss let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd done enough. The world went dark. But this time, it was the kind of dark that ended with morning. The medevac helicopter blades beat the air like a heart refusing to quit. Elena floated somewhere between consciousness and void, aware of motion but disconnected from meaning. Voices spoke in urgent medical shorthand, BP dropping, core temp 89, possible internal bleeding. But they seemed to be discussing someone else, some other broken soldier who'd been pulled from the mountain. The morphine they'd given her turned pain into something abstract. She knew her body was damaged. The information was there, cataloged, filed, but it felt distant, like reading about injuries in a report rather than living them. What cut through the fog wasn't pain, it was sound. 18 confirmed kills, single shooter, extreme range, saved the entire fucking outpost. Someone was crying again. Or still. The sound mixed with rotor wash and the constant electronic beep of medical monitors. Elena tried to open her eyes, managed slits. Saw Morrison sitting across from her in the helicopter, his face pale, his hand shaking as he gripped his rifle. He noticed her watching, leaned forward. Hey, Voss, you're going to be okay, you hear me? You're going to be fine. She wanted to tell him she knew. Wanted to say something about the irony of him comforting her now, after weeks of casual cruelty. But her mouth wouldn't form words, and maybe that was better anyway. The helicopter banked. Through the small window, she caught a glimpse of Black Hollow Pass falling away below. White peaks, dark valleys. The outpost already looking small and insignificant against the massive indifference of the landscape. 18 confirmed kills. She'd done that. With a broken body and 18 rounds, she'd held back an entire assault force. And all she felt was tired. The world faded to white noise and chemical peace. When it returned, everything had changed. The field hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Elena woke to white ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights that hurt her eyes. Her throat felt like someone had filled it with broken glass. Every breath came with a price, ribs protesting the simple act of staying alive. But she was alive. That took a moment to process. Should have died in that crevice. Should have frozen, or bled out, or simply given up when giving up would have been the easiest thing in the world. Didn't, though. A nurse appeared in her peripheral vision, young, professional, the kind of calm that came from seeing terrible things every day and still showing up for work. Welcome back, Sergeant Voss. She checked something on the IV line. You've been out for about 16 hours. How's your pain level? Elena tried to speak. Managed a sound that wasn't quite a word. Don't try to talk yet. You had a breathing tube until 2 hours ago. Your throat's going to be raw for a few days. The nurse adjusted the bed angle slightly. I'm going to ask you some questions. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Can you do that? One blink. Good. Do you know where you are? One blink. Do you remember what happened? One blink. Everything. She remembered everything with perfect, terrible clarity. Excellent. Your injuries are extensive but manageable. Dislocated shoulder, already reduced. 3 cracked ribs. Severe hypothermia, but we caught it in time. Your left ankle. The nurse hesitated. We had to do some reconstruction. You'll need physical therapy, but the surgeon thinks you'll make a full recovery, eventually. Elena processed that. Full recovery eventually meant months. Meant her career was on hold, maybe permanently. The army didn't keep soldiers who couldn't soldier. You have visitors, the nurse continued. A lot of them, actually. Command wants to debrief you. Some officers want to talk. The chaplain's been asking. But I'm holding them all off until you're stronger. Doctor's orders. She smiled slightly. Also my orders. You need rest more than you need questions right now. Elena tried to nod. Her neck informed her that nodding was not currently on the approved activities list. Sleep, Sergeant. That's your mission for the next 48 hours. Everything else can wait. But Elena knew better. Nothing ever waited. The world kept turning, kept demanding, kept taking. Sleep was just postponement. Still, her body made the choice for her. Consciousness slipped away like water through cupped hands, and this time the dark was soft. When she woke again, it was night. The hospital had that particular quality of institutional silence. Never truly quiet, just muted, everything wrapped in gauze and distance. Someone was sitting next to her bed. Elena turned her head slowly, carefully. Captain Driscoll sat in the visitor's chair, still in his field uniform, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He noticed her movement. "Voss?" His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "How are you feeling?" She managed to make her throat work this time. "Like I fell off a mountain." "Fair assessment." He didn't smile. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen." "Can you do that?" She waited. "I was wrong about you." The words came out flat, factual, like he was reporting coordinates. "Completely, catastrophically wrong. Your warnings were accurate. Your tactical assessment was correct. Everything you told me." He stopped, swallowed. "If I'd listened, none of this would have happened. You wouldn't be in this bed. 8 soldiers wouldn't be dead. The attack would have failed before it started." 8 dead. Elena felt that number settle into her chest, heavy and cold. "The enemy knew our shift change schedule," Driscoll continued, "knew our defensive positions, knew exactly where to hit us. It was coordinated with precision that suggests inside information or very good intelligence gathering. They should have won. By every tactical assessment, they had overwhelming advantage. But they didn't account for you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. For the first time since she'd met him, Captain Driscoll looked uncertain. 18 confirmed kills, 4 more probables, at ranges that shouldn't be possible with your weapon system, in conditions that would have stopped any reasonable sniper from even attempting engagement, with injuries that would have incapacitated most soldiers. He met her eyes. "Command wants to know how. They want to know what you are." "I'm a scout shooter," Elena said. Her voice was getting stronger. "I did my job." "No, you did something else, something—" He trailed off. "Your file says you were trained at Fort Benning, Standard Army Sniper School. But there are gaps. 3 months in 2019 where your service record just says specialized training. Another 2 months in 2021, same notation, no details, no location." Elena felt ice forming in her stomach that had nothing to do with hypothermia. "I'm not trying to interrogate you," Driscoll said quickly. "I'm trying to understand, because when I pulled your complete record, the classified sections, I found instructor notes that used words like exceptional, unprecedented, and," he paused, "potentially problematic for standard unit integration. Sir, they knew you were too good, knew that putting you in a regular unit would create exactly the kind of friction we saw. But they did it anyway. And I need to know why." Elena looked at the ceiling. White tiles, fluorescent lights, the same institutional blandness that filled every military facility she'd ever seen. "I can't talk about that," she said finally. "Can't or won't?" "Both." Driscoll nodded slowly. "Understood. But you need to know. Whatever happens next, whatever questions get asked, you have my support, complete support. I owe you that much. I owe you a hell of a lot more than that." He stood, adjusted his uniform out of habit. "There's going to be an investigation. Into the attack, into what happened on the ridge, into everything. Lieutenant Marks and the others are already under arrest. What they did to you, pushing you off that cliff, that's attempted murder. They're looking at courts-martial, prison time." "They were drunk," Elena said quietly. "They were stupid. They didn't mean—" "They absolutely meant it," Driscoll cut her off. "And even if they didn't, intent doesn't change the result. They tried to kill you, Voss. The only reason you're not dead is because you're too stubborn and too skilled to die when you're supposed to." He moved toward the door, stopped. "One more thing. Your warnings about the valley going quiet. We found evidence that civilian settlements had been evacuated 3 days before the attack. The enemy had been planning this for weeks. You spotted it with nothing but observation and instinct. That's not just good fieldcraft, that's something else. Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. With respect, you're looking for explanations that don't exist. I saw something wrong. I reported it. Nobody listened. Then I did my job when it mattered. That's all." Driscoll studied her for a long moment. "That's your story?" "That's what happened." "Okay?" He didn't sound convinced. "Get some rest, Sergeant. You've earned it." He left. Elena stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about classified training programs or instructor notes that used words like problematic Or the 3 months in 2019 that she absolutely could not discuss with anyone who didn't have clearance levels that barely existed. Tried not to think about what she'd really learned in those programs, what she'd really become. The morphine made thinking easier to avoid. She let herself drift, let the drugs take her somewhere warm and distant where questions didn't follow. 3 days later, they moved her to a recovery ward, private room, better bed, window that actually showed daylight. Her ankle was encased in a surgical boot. Her ribs were wrapped. Her shoulder ached but functioned. And the visitors started. First came the chaplain, kind, well-meaning, wanting to talk about trauma and faith. Elena politely declined both. Then came the psychologist, also kind, more clinical, wanting to assess her mental state. Elena passed whatever test was hidden in the questions, though she caught the woman making notes about emotional guardedness and deflection patterns. Then came Colonel Reeves. He arrived without warning, just walked into her room like he owned it. Silver eagles on his collar, ribbons that told stories of decades in uniform, hard eyes that had seen things Elena could only imagine. Sergeant Voss. Not a question, a statement of fact. I'm Colonel Reeves, Special Operations Command. We need to talk. Elena pushed herself more upright in bed, ignoring the protest from her ribs. Sir? I've reviewed your file. All of it. He pulled a chair close to her bed, sat down with the casual authority of someone who didn't need to announce his power, including the parts that Captain Driscoll couldn't access, the parts that explain what you really are. Her pulse kicked up. Sir, The Enhanced Marksmanship Program, Reeves said quietly. 2019 and 2021. Experimental training, combining traditional sniper doctrine with cognitive enhancement protocols. Stress inoculation at levels that would break most soldiers, and selection criteria so narrow that only 12 candidates qualified in 2 years. He leaned forward. You were the only one who completed both phases. Elena said nothing. Confirming or denying would violate security protocols she'd signed her name to in rooms that officially didn't exist. The program was shut down after preliminary data suggested that graduates would be too difficult to integrate into standard units. Too skilled, too independent, too likely to create friction with conventional command structures. Reeves smiled without humor. Looks like that assessment was accurate. Is there a question, sir? Several, but first a statement. What you did at Black Hollow Pass was remarkable. 18 confirmed kills at ranges that shouldn't be possible, under conditions that defy reasonable engagement parameters, with injuries that would have stopped anyone else. You saved dozens of lives and prevented a successful enemy assault. But you also violated standing orders by engaging without authorization, operated outside your assigned role, and demonstrated capabilities that raise questions about what else you might be capable of. He watched her carefully. The Army doesn't like questions. We like clear answers, defined parameters, predictable outcomes. I'm a soldier, sir. I did my job. You're a weapon that we don't fully understand how to deploy. That makes you valuable and dangerous in equal measure. Elena met his eyes. What do you want, Colonel? Honesty. Tell me what you can do. Tell me what the Enhanced Marksmanship Program actually produced. She thought about the training. The 3 months where they'd stripped away everything she thought she knew about shooting and rebuilt her from the ground up. The cognitive enhancement protocols, not drugs, not implants, just brutal systematic rewiring of how her brain processed visual information, calculated distance, controlled breathing under stress. The second phase had been worse, or better, depending on how you measured. 2 months where they'd taught her to shoot through pain, through fear, through injuries that would stop normal soldiers. Taught her to become still when everything said to move, to think clearly when everything said to panic. They'd made her into something that could function when function should be impossible. But she couldn't tell him that. Couldn't tell anyone that. I'm good at my job, she said finally. That's all. Reeves studied her. You're protecting the program. Even though it abandoned you. Even though they threw you into a standard unit knowing exactly what would happen. The program gave me skills. What I do with them is my choice. Fair enough? He stood. Here's my proposition. When you're recovered, I want you transferred to SOCOM. Special Operations needs people who can do the impossible. You've already proven you can. We'll give you a team that understands what you bring to the table, mission parameters that actually match your capabilities. And if I say no, then you go back to a regular unit, and we all pretend that what happened at Black Hollow Pass was just luck and determination. You'll spend the rest of your career being either worshipped or feared, never trusted, always questioned. He moved toward the door. Think about it. You have until you're cleared for duty. He left her alone with the weight of choices that weren't really choices at all. Fucked it. The fourth visitor came late that night. Elena had been drifting in and out of sleep, the medication pulling her under in waves. She surfaced to the sound of someone sitting in the chair beside her bed. Lieutenant Marks. He looked terrible, eyes red-rimmed, uniform wrinkled, hands clasped between his knees like he was praying to something that didn't answer. They told me not to come, he said without preamble. Said it would make things worse for my court-martial. But I needed to. He stopped, swallowed. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know words don't fix what I did. But I'm sorry. Elena watched him without speaking. I was drunk, Marks continued, and stupid, and scared. You made me look bad and I couldn't handle it. So I convinced myself you were the problem, that you were unstable, dangerous, that the team would be better without you. He laughed bitterly. Then you saved my life, saved all our lives, while we were leaving you to die. Why are you here? Elena's voice was flat. Because I need you to know what happened to you before on Broken Echo. I read the real report, not the one I wrote, the actual intelligence assessment. He met her eyes. You were right. There was an ambush. Your shot stopped it. But I couldn't admit that because it made me look incompetent, made me look like I'd missed something obvious. So you blame me. So I destroyed your career to protect my ego. He stood up, paced. The thing is, I knew you were better than me, better than any of us. From day one, I knew. And instead of learning from you, instead of using that to make the team stronger, I made you the enemy. Elena felt something cold settling in her chest. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was something more tired, more resigned. They're going to ask me to testify at your court-martial, she said. I know. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. I know that too. Marks moved back to the chair but didn't sit. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm just asking you to understand why. Not to forgive. I don't deserve that. Just to understand that I'm not a monster. I'm just a coward who made terrible choices when his pride got hurt. Being a coward doesn't make you less responsible. No, it doesn't. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, set it on the table beside her bed. That's yours. It fell out of your pack when we pushed you. Elena looked. Her father's dog tags, the ones she carried on every mission, never talked about, kept private. He was a sniper too, Mark said quietly. I looked him up. Sergeant First Class Thomas Voss, 3 tours, Silver Star, killed in action in Kandahar when you were 17. Get out. Voss, get out. He left. Elena stared at the dog tags, didn't touch them, didn't cry, just stared until the medication pulled her back under, and she didn't have to think about fathers or legacy or the weight of expectations that had shaped her entire life. But 2 weeks passed. Elena progressed from bed to wheelchair to crutches. Physical therapy was brutal. A cheerful sadist named Corporal Williams who believed that pain was just weakness leaving the body and seemed determined to extract every ounce. Come on, Voss, 10 more reps. Your ankle's not going to rebuild itself. It might if you stop torturing it. That's not torture. That's aggressive encouragement. Williams grinned. You took 18 shots that saved an outpost. I think you can handle 18 leg lifts. Elena gritted her teeth and did the reps. Sweat ran down her face. Her ankle screamed. But the motion was getting easier, the strength slowly returning. Between therapy sessions, she caught fragments of news. The investigation into the attack was ongoing. Evidence suggested the enemy had been conducting surveillance for months, mapping the outpost routines with precision that implied either inside information or exceptional intelligence gathering. Marks, Davis, and Chen were in the brig awaiting courts-martial. Their careers were over. Prison time was inevitable. The army was making an example. You didn't try to murder fellow soldiers, no matter how drunk or stupid you were. Captain Driscoll had been formally reprimanded for failing to act on Elena's warnings. Not enough to destroy his career, but enough to stall it. He'd visited once, apologized again, then stopped coming. Guilt had weight that visits couldn't lift. Morrison appeared regularly, bringing contraband coffee and awkward conversation. He was trying, Elena could see that, trying to make up for weeks of casual cruelty with daily gestures of friendship. It was too little, too late, but she appreciated the effort. Heard Colonel Reeves offered you a SOCOM slot, Morrison said during one visit. Word travels fast. It's a small army, especially for people like you. He sipped his coffee. You going to take it? Don't know yet. You should. Regular units don't know what to do with someone like you. We're not built for exceptional. We're built for average with occasional competence. He smiled without humor. You deserve better. I deserve a unit that doesn't try to kill me. That's a pretty low bar. Yeah, sorry about that. He looked at his hands. For what it's worth, I knew what they were planning. That night. I knew Marks was going to confront you about the warnings, knew he was drunk and angry. I should have stopped it. But you didn't. But I didn't. He stood up. So I'm telling you now, take the SOCOM offer. Get away from people like us. Find a team that actually deserves what you can do. He left. Elena sat with her cooling coffee and thought about choices, about starting over, about whether anywhere in the Army would actually be different. On day 17 of her recovery, the investigation broke open. Elena was in physical therapy when MPs arrived with Colonel Reeves. Williams took one look at their faces and made himself scarce. Sergeant Voss, Reeves said without preamble, we need you to look at something. He pulled out a tablet, showed her surveillance footage. The quality was poor. Night vision, grainy, shot from extreme distance. But Elena could make out figures moving through terrain she recognized. This was recovered from enemy equipment captured during the battle, Reeves explained. It's reconnaissance footage from 3 weeks before the attack. Elena watched. The footage showed the outpost from multiple angles, documented shift changes, mapped defensive positions with precision that made her skin crawl. Then the camera panned across faces. American soldiers on patrol. And there, stop, Elena said. Go back. Reeves reversed the footage, froze on a frame showing a soldier in American uniform standing at the perimeter, clearly visible, clearly identifiable. Davis. We found communications equipment in his personal effects, Reeves said quietly. Encrypted. Connected to networks we're still unraveling. We believe he'd been feeding the enemy information for at least 2 months, maybe longer. Elena felt the room tilt. He was the leak. He was the leak. The attack timing, the shift change knowledge, the defensive positions, all of it came from him. Reeves put the tablet away. He's claiming he was coerced, that they had leverage on him. We're investigating, but honestly, motivation doesn't change the facts. He betrayed his unit, got 8 soldiers killed, nearly got everyone killed. Does Marks know? We told him this morning. He's not taking it well. His entire narrative about you being unstable, about needing to remove you for team safety, turns out the actual threat was sitting right next to him the whole time. Elena closed her eyes, tried to process. All those weeks of being dismissed, sidelined, blamed, and the real problem had been hiding in plain sight, protected by the very prejudice that had made her invisible. There's more, Reeves continued. We found evidence that Davis was specifically instructed to discredit you. The enemy knew you were their biggest threat. Your observation skills, your shooting ability, they wanted you removed before the attack. So they used Marks. They didn't have to use him. They just had to point him at you and let his ego do the rest. Reeves sat down across from her. The night they pushed you off that cliff, Davis was there, wasn't he? He was. Did he participate, or did he just watch? Elena thought back, remembered the confrontation, Marks doing most of the talking, Chen grabbing her, Marks pushing her. Davis had stood back, said nothing, just watched. He watched, Elena said slowly. He didn't try to stop it, but he didn't help either. He didn't have to help. He'd already accomplished his mission, getting you isolated at the cliff edge, getting Marks angry enough to act. After that, gravity did the rest. Reeves leaned forward. You should have died in that fall, Voss. The fact that you survived, that you were able to engage the enemy from that position. That wasn't in their calculations. They thought they'd eliminated their biggest threat. Instead, they created exactly the scenario where you could do the most damage. Ironic. Strategic failure masquerading as irony. He stood. Davis is cooperating now, giving us names, networks, everything. In exchange, we're not executing him for treason, just life in prison. Generous. Practical. The information he's providing is worth more than his death. Reeves moved toward the door. This changes your court-martial testimony. Marks and Chen are guilty of assault, but the conspiracy runs deeper. The prosecutor wants to know if you're willing to testify to the larger pattern. When? 2 weeks. Soon as you're cleared to travel. Elena nodded. I'll be ready. He left her alone with the weight of revelation. The whole nightmare had been orchestrated. Not random cruelty, not simple prejudice. Calculated sabotage designed to remove her before she could disrupt their attack. They'd almost succeeded. Almost. The night before her testimony, Elena sat in her hospital room staring at her father's dog tags. The ones Marks had returned. The ones that carried weight beyond metal and chain. Her father had been exceptional too. Too good at his job. Made his commanders nervous. Spent his career being shuffled between units that didn't quite know what to do with him. He died alone on a rooftop in Kandahar, providing overwatch for a team that had left him exposed. The official report called it enemy action. The classified addendum suggested friendly incompetence had played a role. Elena had joined the army to honor his legacy, to be the kind of soldier he'd been, to prove that exceptional didn't mean expendable. Instead, she'd learned that the army had a type. And she wasn't it, never would be. Colonel Reeves' offer sat on the table beside the dog tags. Transfer to SOCOM, Special Operations, a place built for people who operated outside normal parameters. A place where exceptional was the baseline, not the aberration. Elena picked up the dog tags, put them around her neck, felt the familiar weight settle against her chest. Then she picked up the transfer paperwork and signed her name. Her father had died trying to fit into a system that didn't want him. She didn't have to make the same mistake. She could choose a different path. Could find a place where her skills were assets, not liabilities. Could stop being the ghost in someone else's story and start being the weapon she was trained to be. Tomorrow she'd testify. Tell the truth about what happened on that ridge, in that valley, in the weeks leading up to the night they tried to erase her. But tonight, she made peace with who she was and what she'd become. Sergeant Elena Voss, Enhanced Marksmanship Program graduate, the impossible shot that changed everything. And she was done apologizing for it. The courtroom was smaller than Elena expected, not the grand theatrical space from movies, just a utilitarian room with harsh lighting, government-issue furniture, and the seal of the United States Army mounted on the wall like a reminder of who held all the power. She walked in on a cane, the surgical boot replaced by a reinforced brace that let her put weight on her ankle without screaming. Physical therapy had worked miracles in 2 weeks, but miracles had limits. She still moved like someone who'd been broken and hastily reassembled. The gallery was packed, officers she didn't recognize. JAG lawyers with briefcases. Morrison sitting in the back row, his face carefully neutral. And there, at the defense table, Lieutenant Marks in his dress uniform, stripped of rank insignia, looking 10 years older than he had a month ago. He didn't meet her eyes when she entered. The military judge, a colonel with silver hair and a face that had forgotten how to smile, gestured to the witness stand. Sergeant Voss, please be seated. Elena crossed the room. Every step measured, controlled. She'd practiced this walk for 3 days, making sure she looked capable, professional, not like a victim. Victims got sympathy. She wanted something else. Respect. The prosecutor rose. Major Chen, no relation to the specialist awaiting his own court-martial. She was sharp-featured, economical in movement, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste words. Sergeant Voss, thank you for your testimony today. I know this is difficult. It's necessary, ma'am. Let's start with the night of December 24th. Can you describe what happened at approximately 2100 hours? Elena told it. Clean, factual, no embellishment. The confrontation at the cliff, the accusations, the physical assault, the fall. She watched Marks while she spoke, saw him flinch at certain details, saw his hands clench when she described hitting rock. And after you fell, Major Chen continued. What did you do? I assessed my injuries, secured my weapon, observed the valley. You were severely wounded, hypothermic, alone. Most soldiers would have focused on survival. Survival was doing my job, which was protecting the outpost. Elena shifted slightly, her ankle protesting. I spotted enemy movement, counted approximately 37 combatants in 2 assault groups. They were staging for a coordinated attack. But you had no way to warn the outpost. No radio, no way to climb out, no backup. Elena paused. So I engaged. The courtroom was silent. Major Chen let the moment breathe before continuing. 18 confirmed kills, extreme range, severe injuries. Explain how that was possible. Elena had been waiting for this question, had rehearsed the answer that was true without being complete. Training, focus, necessity. The ballistic analysis suggests shots that exceed normal capability for your weapon system. The range alone, I had elevation advantage, clear sight lines, targets that didn't know I was there. Elena met the prosecutor's eyes. I did what I was trained to do. You did more than that. I did what was necessary. Major Chen nodded, let it go, moved to safer ground. Did Lieutenant Marks know about your specialized training, the enhanced marksmanship program? No, ma'am. That program is classified. He knew I was a qualified sniper. He didn't know the rest. Would that knowledge have changed how he treated you? Elena considered. It might have made him more afraid. Fear was already the problem. Marks's defense attorney, a captain with earnest eyes and a losing hand, objected. The judge sustained. Major Chen shifted tactics. Let's discuss Specialist Davis. When did you first suspect he might be compromised? I didn't. Not until Colonel Reeves showed me the evidence. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. I thought the hostility was personal, prejudice, normal unit friction. I didn't see the larger pattern. But you saw other patterns. You noticed the valley going quiet, civilian evacuation, signs of pending attack. That's different. That's observation and analysis. Davis was... Elena stopped, chose her words carefully. He was good at hiding, better than I was at seeing. Do you blame yourself for not identifying him as a threat? I blame myself for a lot of things, ma'am. That's just one more item on the list. The testimony continued for 2 hours. Question after question, detail after detail, building a narrative that was damning and complicated in equal measure. Yes, Marks and Chen had assaulted her. Yes, they'd shown reckless disregard for her life. But yes, they'd also been manipulated by Davis, used as weapons by an enemy that understood human nature better than most commanders. When Major Chen finally said no further questions, Elena felt wrung out, emptied. Then Mark's attorney stood up. Sergeant Voss, I only have a few questions. First, do you believe Lieutenant Marks intended to kill you? Elena thought about that night. The anger in Mark's eyes, the calculated shove, the sound of boots walking away while she lay broken in the snow. I believe he intended to hurt me badly enough that I'd be removed from the unit, whether that meant death or just medical discharge. She paused. I don't think he thought it through that far. So you're saying this was manslaughter, not murder? I'm saying I don't know what was in his head. I only know what his actions did, which was create the circumstances that allowed you to save the outpost. The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Major Chen was on her feet objecting. The defense attorney pressed on. Isn't it true that if you hadn't fallen into that crevice, you wouldn't have had the angle necessary to engage the enemy? That your position, as terrible as it was, gave you tactical advantage you couldn't have achieved otherwise? Objection. Your Honor, counsel is suggesting the assault was somehow beneficial. I'll allow it, the judge said. But tread carefully, Captain. The defense attorney turned back to Elena. I'm not saying what happened to you is right. I'm saying that consequences are complicated. My client made a terrible mistake, but that mistake inadvertently created the circumstances that saved lives. Does that factor into your assessment of his culpability? Elena looked at Marks. Really looked at him, saw the guilt written in every line of his face, saw the man who'd tried to kill her and the man who'd begged forgiveness, and tried to reconcile the two into something that made sense. No, she said finally. What he did to me was attempted murder. That I turned it into something else doesn't absolve him. He doesn't get credit for my choices. The defense attorney nodded like he'd expected that answer. One final question. Do you forgive him? Objection. I'll allow it. Elena held Mark's gaze, saw him waiting for the answer that would either damn him further or offer some small redemption. Ask me again in 10 years, she said quietly. Right now, I'm still too angry to know. The court-martial concluded 3 days later. Marks got 12 years, Chen got 8. Davis got life without parole, buried so deep in military prison that his name would become a cautionary tale. Elena watched the sentencing via video feed from her hospital room, felt nothing but tired relief that it was over. Colonel Reeves appeared the next morning with paperwork and orders. Your transfer to SOCOM is approved. You'll report to Fort Bragg in 6 weeks for integration training. That gives you time to finish physical therapy and get your ankle operational. He set the folder on her bed. You'll be assigned to a special projects unit, small team, high-value targets, the kind of work where your particular skills are assets, not problems. What kind of work exactly? The kind we don't discuss in hospitals. He smiled slightly. Let's just say you won't be bored. And my medical status? The docs say you'll make a full recovery. Eventually. Your ankle will always be a weak point, but with proper maintenance, it shouldn't limit your operational capability. He paused. That said, you're not going to be running marathons. Your days of long-range foot patrols are probably over. Elena had expected that. I can work with it. I know you can. That's why we want you. Reeves moved toward the door. One more thing. The enhanced marksmanship program is being reactivated. Different leadership, different integration protocols, but same core mission, creating precision shooters who can operate in impossible conditions. They want you to consult on the curriculum. I'm not an instructor. You're a proof of concept. That's more valuable. He opened the door. Think about it. You've got 6 weeks. He left. Elena looked at the transfer orders, the medical evaluations, the new chapter being written in official language and government stamps. A new start, a better team, a place where she wouldn't have to apologize for being exceptional. She should have felt relieved, victorious even. Instead, she felt unfinished. Morrison found her in the physical therapy gym 2 days later, working through resistance exercises that made sweat run down her face and her ankles scream in protest. You're pushing too hard, he said, leaning against the doorframe. I'm pushing exactly hard enough. Elena completed the set, breathing hard. 6 weeks isn't much time. 6 weeks to do what? You've already got your transfer, already got your clean bill of health, more or less. What are you trying to prove? Elena grabbed a towel, wiped her face. I'm trying to be ready. For what? For whatever comes next. Morrison crossed the room, sat on the bench beside her. I heard about the enhanced marksmanship program, about what they made you into. He looked at his hands. Makes sense now. Why you were always better, why you saw things we missed. You were literally trained to be better. Training doesn't make you better, it just gives you tools. What you do with them is on you. Still, must be weird. Being the only one who completed the program, knowing you're carrying something that nobody else has. It's lonely, Elena said quietly. That's what it is. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Morrison pulled something from his pocket. A patch. The unit insignia from Black Hollow Pass. The guys wanted you to have this. The ones who weren't assholes, were being reassigned, scattered across different posts. Before we split, we took a vote. Wanted you to know that despite everything, you're still one of us. You saved us. That matters. Elena took the patch, looked at the embroidered mountain, the crossed rifles, the motto she'd never quite believed, always vigilant. Tell them thanks. Tell them yourself. They're having a thing tonight, unofficial, off base, nothing fancy, just drinks and stories. He stood up. You should come. Let them say thank you in person. I don't know if that's a good idea. Probably not, but good ideas are overrated. He headed for the door. 2100 hours. Murphy's Bar on Route 9. Show up if you want. We'll understand if you don't. He left her alone with the patch and the weight of choices that felt heavier than they should. Elena almost didn't go. Spent the evening telling herself she didn't owe them anything, didn't need their gratitude or their guilt-driven gestures of friendship. But at 20:45, she found herself getting dressed, putting on civilian clothes, jeans, sweater, jacket that hid the surgical brace on her ankle, looking at herself in the mirror and seeing someone who'd survived but hadn't yet figured out how to move forward. The cab dropped her at Murphy's at 2100 on the dot. The bar was exactly what she expected. Local dive, neon signs, country music playing too loud, the smell of beer and fried food thick in the air. Morrison spotted her immediately, waved her over to a corner booth where a dozen soldiers were crammed together, already several drinks in. "She came!" someone shouted. "Kowalski, maybe. Voss actually came." They made space for her, pushed a beer into her hand, started talking all at once, voices overlapping, stories flowing. "When we realized it was you shooting, couldn't believe the distances. Thought you were dead. 18 fucking kills." Elena let it wash over her, sipped her beer, felt something in her chest loosen slightly. These weren't her friends, weren't even really her unit anymore, but they were soldiers who'd been there, who'd seen what happened, who understood in a way that civilians never could. "Speech," someone called out. "Voss needs to give a speech." "I'm not giving a speech. Come on, just something, anything." Elena looked around the table, saw faces that had once dismissed her, mocked her, made her invisible, saw them looking at her now with something that might have been respect. "Fine. One thing," she raised her beer. "To the ones who didn't make it, the 8 we lost. They deserved better." The table went quiet. Then Morrison raised his own beer. "To the fallen." "To the fallen," they echoed. They drank. The moment passed. Conversation resumed, louder now, stories getting bigger, laughter cutting through the underlying grief. Elena stayed for 2 hours. Listened more than she talked. Let herself be part of something, even if it was temporary, even if it came too late to matter. At 2300, she slipped out, caught a cab back to base, sat in her hospital room with the lights off and the unit patch in her hands. Tomorrow, she'd go back to physical therapy. Keep pushing, keep healing, keep preparing for the transfer that would take her somewhere new. But tonight, she let herself grieve. Not for what she'd lost, that was already gone, already processed, but for what she'd never really had. The belonging she'd wanted, the acceptance she'd craved. She'd been looking for it in the wrong place, looking for people to see her, value her, understand her, when what she really needed was to see herself clearly, value what she'd become. Understand that some people weren't meant to fit in standard boxes. They were meant to break the boxes entirely. Fort Bragg welcomed her with rain and bureaucracy. 6 weeks later, Elena arrived with her ankle mostly healed, her paperwork in order, an expectation she was careful not to voice. The Special Operations Compound was different from regular Army. Cleaner, quieter. Everyone moved with purpose. No wasted motion, no performance. These were soldiers who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Colonel Reeves met her at processing. "Welcome to the real war, Sergeant. How's the ankle?" "Functional, sir." "Good. You're going to need it." He gestured for her to follow. "Your team's already in the field, training exercise in the mountains. They'll be back tomorrow. Until then, you're going to meet the person who's going to make your life difficult for the next few months." He led her to a small office where a woman sat reviewing files. She was mid-40s, athletic build, face that had seen sun and wind and violence. Master Sergeant Walsh, according to the nameplate on her desk. She looked up, eyes sharp enough to cut. "So you're the ghost from Black Hollow Pass." "I'm Sergeant Voss, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me. I work for a living." Walsh stood, came around the desk. "I've read your file, all of it. Enhanced marksmanship program, impossible shots, lone wolf tendencies, the kind of operator who either becomes a legend or gets their team killed." "I've never gotten anyone killed. You've never had a team worth the name. That's about to change." Walsh pulled out a tablet, showed her personnel files. "Your new unit, 6 operators, each one exceptional in different ways. They're going to push you, test you, make you prove you belong, and you're going to do the same to them." Elena looked at the faces on the screen, recognized one of them, Captain Sarah Chen, no relation to the others. Distinguished Service Cross, 3 combat deployments, reputation for taking missions nobody else wanted. "When do I meet them?" "Tomorrow. Oh, 600, full kit. We're running integration drills for the next 2 weeks. If you survive that, you're operational." "And if I don't survive?" Walsh smiled without warmth. Then you go back to a regular unit and we all pretend this didn't happen. But you won't fail. You're too stubborn and too good. She sat back down. Dismissed, Sergeant. Get settled. Get sleep. Tomorrow starts the real test. Elena left. Found her assigned quarters. Small room, basic furniture, window overlooking the training grounds. Unpacked her gear with mechanical efficiency. Weapon maintenance, uniform prep. All the rituals that made chaos manageable. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and realized she was terrified. Not of the training, not of the team, but of the possibility that even here, in this place built for exceptional operators, she might still be too different, too damaged, too marked by what had happened at Black Hollow Pass. The fear lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then she crushed it with the same cold efficiency she'd used to make impossible shots from an impossible position. She wasn't the scared scout trying to prove herself anymore. Wasn't the victim waiting for rescue. She was the weapon the enhanced marksmanship program had created. The soldier who'd saved an outpost with 18 rounds and a broken body. The ghost who'd turned betrayal into victory. And tomorrow, she'd prove it all over again. 0600 came early. Elena arrived at the training ground in full combat gear, rifle slung across her back, everything immaculate. Her ankle protested but held. She'd learned to work through pain. It was just information now, data to file away and ignore. 5 operators were already there. They turned as she approached, assessment in every eye. Captain Chen stepped forward. Sergeant Voss, welcome to Ghost Unit. I'm Captain Chen. This is Warrant Officer Rodriguez, Sergeant First Class Park, Staff Sergeant Williams, and Specialist Morrison. No relation to your former unit mate. She gestured to each in turn. We've all read your file. We all know what you can do. Now you're going to show us. Yes, ma'am. First test is simple. Qualification shoot. Standard course. Moving targets. Various ranges. Nothing you haven't done before. Chen smiled slightly. Except you're shooting left-handed. Elena blinked. Ma'am? Your right shoulder. It was dislocated. Medical says it's healed, but scar tissue might affect your fine motor control under stress. So we need to know, can you shoot with your weak hand if the mission requires it? It was a test. More than qualification, it was assessment. They wanted to see how she adapted, how she handled unexpected parameters. Elena switched her rifle to her left shoulder, felt the unfamiliar weight distribution, the slightly wrong angle of aim. She'd trained ambidextrous shooting in the enhanced marksmanship program, but it had always been supplementary, never primary. Ready when you are, ma'am? Range is hot. Show us what you've got, Ghost. Ghost, not Voss, not Sergeant. Ghost, she liked it. The course was brutal. Targets appeared at varying distances. 200 meters, 400, 600. Moving, stationary, partially concealed. Normal right-handed shooting, she would have nailed everyone without thinking. Left-handed, everything was wrong. Her sight picture kept drifting. Her trigger control felt sloppy. Her breathing pattern was off by microseconds that mattered. She missed the first 2 targets. Felt frustration rise, crushed it, adjusted. 3rd target, hit. 4th, hit. 5th, center mass. By the 10th target, she'd found the rhythm. Her brain had adapted, compensating for the differences, building new neural pathways on the fly. The enhanced marksmanship program had taught her that, how to learn in real time, how to make impossible adjustments under pressure. 16th target appeared at 800 meters. Extreme distance for left-handed shooting with unfamiliar muscle patterns. Elena settled into position. Read the wind. Calculated the adjustments. Let everything except the shot disappear. Fired. The target dropped. Behind her, someone whistled. Holy shit! Elena cleared her weapon, turned around. The team was staring at her with expressions ranging from impressed to slightly afraid. Captain Chen nodded slowly. Welcome to Ghost Unit, Sergeant. I think you're going to fit right in. The next 2 weeks were the hardest training Elena had ever experienced, and she'd been through programs designed to break people who didn't break. Ghost Unit didn't train like regular soldiers. They trained like weapons being forged. Every drill pushed limits. Every exercise had stakes that felt real because they were preparing for missions where real was the only thing that mattered. Close quarters, combat. Helicopter insertion under fire. Long-range reconnaissance in hostile territory. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. They ran it all, over and over, until it became reflex. And every day, Elena proved herself a little more. Rodriguez taught her new demolitions techniques. Park showed her infiltration methods the regular army never touched. Williams shared medical skills that went beyond field first aid. Morrison, the new one, turned out to be a communications specialist who could hack into systems that officially didn't exist. But it was Captain Chen who really tested her. Day 12, 0300 hours. Chen woke her with a flashlight in the face and an order. Full kit, 5 minutes. Move. Elena moved. Dressed, geared up, met Chen outside in the dark. Solo mission, Chen said. Target package is in this folder. You have 12 hours to plan and execute. No support, no backup. Just you and your capabilities. She handed over the file. Prove you can operate alone when the mission requires it. Elena opened the folder, found a surveillance photo, a location, a set of parameters that made her chest tighten. The target was a mock enemy commander. The location was 15 miles into mountain wilderness. The parameters included no GPS, no radio contact, and a requirement that she reach overwatch position undetected. It was Black Hollow Pass all over again, deliberately. Chen was watching her face. Problem, Sergeant? Elena looked at the mountains in the distance, remembered falling, remembered cold, remembered being alone while the world tried to kill her. No problem, ma'am. I've done this before. I know. That's why I'm sending you. You need to prove to yourself that you can go back to that place and own it. Chen's voice softened slightly. Fear is information. Use it. Elena took the folder, started walking toward the mountains. 12 hours. No support. Just her in the dark and the memories that tried to pull her under. She moved through wilderness with purpose learned from necessity. Every step deliberate. Every decision calculated. The mission parameters were clear. Reach the overwatch position by 1200 hours, acquire visual confirmation of the target, extract without detection. Simple on paper, complex in execution. The terrain fought her, rocky slopes that wanted to twist her healing ankle, dense forest that concealed sightlines, weather that shifted from clear to fog to light snow and back again. But Elena had learned to fight terrain, had learned that landscape was just another opponent, and opponents had patterns. She reached overwatch position at 11:47, 13 minutes early, found the hide she'd scouted from the mission photos, settled in with her rifle, became still. At 12:03, the target appeared. Mock enemy commander, actually Colonel Reeves in borrowed gear moving through the valley with his security detail. Elena tracked him through her scope, calculated the shot she would take if this was real. Windage, elevation, all the factors that turned physics into mortality. Then she did something unexpected. She put down her rifle, pulled out her emergency signal mirror, aimed a flash of reflected sunlight directly at Reeves' position. 3 short flashes. 3 long, 3 short. SOS, the universal signal, but reversed. Not a call for help. A declaration. Reeves stopped walking, looked up toward her position. Even at 900 meters, she could see him smile. He keyed his radio. His voice came through her emergency receiver, the one she'd been carrying but not supposed to use. Explain your tactical decision, Ghost. Elena picked up her own radio, broke protocol. Answered. In a real scenario, sir, the shot alerts everyone within 2 miles to my position. I become the priority target, but sending a signal, something they can't trace immediately, creates confusion. They know someone's watching, but not where, not who, not how many. It multiplies my effect without compromising my position. Silence on the radio. Then, mission complete. Extract when ready. You passed. Elena broke down her position, erased signs of her presence, moved back through the wilderness with the same careful precision she'd used to arrive. She reached base camp at 1800 hours. Chen was waiting. Unconventional solution, Chen said. Effective solution. Agreed. You're thinking tactically, not just mechanically. That's what we need. Chen gestured for her to follow. Debrief in 1 hour, get cleaned up. Then we talk about your first real mission. Elena stopped walking. First real mission? You think we were training you just for fun? Ghost Unit has work to do, and you're about to find out what that work actually looks like. Done. The briefing room was classified to levels Elena had never seen. No windows, no recording devices, just maps, satellite photos, and 5 operators who'd become her team. Colonel Reeves stood at the front. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Mission designation, Operation Silent Echo. Target, high-value enemy commander operating in the same mountain region where Black Hollow Pass is located. Intelligence suggests he's planning another coordinated assault, this time on multiple outposts simultaneously. He pulled up a satellite image. Elena's blood went cold. It was the valley, the same valley where she'd nearly died, where 18 rounds had changed everything. The enemy thinks we're weak in this region now. Thinks the attack on Black Hollow Pass proves they can operate with impunity. They're wrong. Reeves looked directly at Elena. We're sending Ghost Unit to prove exactly how wrong they are. Captain Chen took over. 6-person team, deep insertion. 48 hours to locate, identify, and neutralize the target. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on confirmed enemy combatants. Mission timeline starts in 72 hours. Elena stared at the map, at the terrain that still haunted her nightmares, at the ridge where they'd pushed her off, the crevice that had nearly become her grave. Problem, Sergeant? Chen asked. Everyone was watching her, waiting to see if she'd fold, if the trauma was too fresh, too raw. Elena thought about fear, about how Chen had said it was just information. No problem, ma'am. I know that terrain better than anyone. I'll get us in. I'll get us out. You'll do more than that, Reeves said. You'll be primary shooter. When we locate the target, you make the call. You take the shot. He paused. Think you can do that? Go back to the place that almost killed you and operate at peak efficiency? Elena looked at the valley on the map, remembered cold, remembered pain, remembered becoming something more than she'd been. Sir, that place didn't almost kill me. It made me dangerous. She met his eyes. Let's go back and finish what we started. The briefing continued. Details, contingencies, equipment lists. Elena absorbed it all with the focused intensity of someone who'd learned that details were the difference between living and dying. When they finally dismissed, Chen pulled her aside. You sure about this? Nobody would judge you if you needed more time. I don't need more time. I need to prove to myself that I'm not defined by what happened to me, that I'm defined by what I do next. Chen studied her. Fair enough. But Voss, if you freeze out there, if the memories become too much, you tell me. Pride doesn't keep you alive on a mission. Honesty does. Understood, ma'am? Good. Now get some rest. 72 hours until we insert. I want everyone sharp. Elena went to her quarters, sat on her bed with her father's dog tags in her hand, thought about legacy and choice and the weight of proving yourself over and over again. She'd survived Black Hollow Pass, survived the fall, the cold, the betrayal. Now she was going back, not as a victim, not as someone trying to fit in, as Ghost, as the weapon she'd been trained to be, as the soldier who'd turned 18 rounds into salvation. The valley had almost killed her once. This time, she'd make it remember her name. 72 hours collapsed into moments. Equipment checks, mission planning, sleep that came in fragments between adrenaline and anticipation. Elena moved through it all with mechanical precision, letting training override the noise in her head that whispered about mountains and falling and cold that wouldn't let go. The night before insertion, she found herself in the armory at 0200, unable to sleep, rebuilding grace for the 100th time. Hands that knew every component, every tolerance, every microscopic imperfection that might matter when distance and wind turned shooting into faith. Can't sleep either? Elena turned. Rodriguez stood in the doorway, his own rifle case in hand, just making sure everything's perfect. It was perfect 6 hours ago. He crossed to the bench beside her, started his own maintenance ritual. But I get it. Tomorrow we go back to the place that tried to erase you. Hard to sleep through that. I'm fine. You're lying. That's okay. We all lie before missions. He worked in silence for a moment. Chen told me what happened. The whole story. Not just the official version. Elena's hand stilled on the bolt carrier. And I'm trying to figure out if you're the most dangerous person on this team or the most damaged. He looked at her. Maybe both. Does it matter? It matters if the damage compromises the mission. It matters if we're in the field and you freeze because the terrain triggers something you haven't processed. Rodriguez set down his cleaning rod. I've seen soldiers go back to places that broke them. Sometimes they're stronger for it. Sometimes they shatter all over again. I won't shatter. How do you know? Elena assembled her rifle with practiced efficiency, checked the action, dry-fired at an empty wall. Because shattering is a luxury I can't afford. The mission requires me to function, so I'll function. Everything else is just noise. Rodriguez studied her. The enhanced marksmanship program really did a number on you, didn't it? Turned you into someone who can compartmentalize trauma like it's just another piece of equipment to maintain. It taught me to survive. No, it taught you to operate. Survival is different. Survival means dealing with what happened, not just filing it away and pretending the file drawer won't eventually burst open. He stood up. Look, I'm not a shrink. I'm just a guy who's seen good operators destroy themselves because they thought being tough meant never breaking. You're allowed to be human, Voss, even in Ghost Unit. He left. Elena sat alone with her rifle and the truth she didn't want to examine. The enhanced marksmanship program had taught her to function through anything. Pain, fear, exhaustion, all just variables to factor into the equation. But Rodriguez was right. They'd never taught her what to do with the aftermath. Never taught her how to be human when the mission was over. Maybe that was the point. Maybe they'd wanted to create operators who never turned off, who stayed weapons even when the fighting stopped. She'd become exactly what they'd designed, and now she was going back to prove it. The helicopter insertion happened at 0400 under a moonless sky. Ghost Unit dropped into the wilderness 15 miles north of Black Hollow Pass, far enough from enemy detection, but close enough to reach the operational area before dawn. The team moved in tight formation through terrain that Elena knew from nightmares. Every rock formation, every tree line, every ridge that could hide threats or offer concealment. She'd studied it all during her recovery, memorized it like scripture. Captain Chen was on point. Rodriguez and Park flanked. Williams took rear security. Morrison, the new one, stayed centered with the communications equipment. And Elena moved like a shadow between them, weapon ready, eyes scanning. They'd been moving for 2 hours when Chen raised a fist. Everyone stopped, dropped, became still. Hand signals. Enemy. 12 o'clock. 200 meters. Elena glassed the area through her scope, found them. 4 soldiers in winter camouflage moving along a game trail with the casual confidence of people who thought they owned the terrain. Patrol, routine. Probably checking trap lines and observation posts. Chen's hand moved again. Avoid. We ghost past. They did. Slipped around the patrol using terrain and patience, got within 30 meters without being detected. The enemy soldiers passed by, oblivious, their radio chatter carrying on the wind. Russian, maybe Chechen, hard to tell from fragments. When the patrol was gone, Chen keyed her radio. First contact avoided. Continuing to primary objective. They moved deeper into enemy territory. The sun was rising now, turning the snow golden, making shadows harder to read. Dangerous time. Visibility improving for everyone, defenders and attackers alike. At 0743 they reached the observation point, a rocky outcrop that overlooked the valley where Elena had nearly died. She could see the outpost in the distance, rebuilt, reinforced, still flying the American flag. And below, in a sheltered hollow that wouldn't have been visible from the outpost, she saw what they'd come for. Enemy forward operating base. 20-some structures, supply depot, communications array, and somewhere in that maze of tents and equipment, their target. Chen glassed it thoroughly. Bigger than intelligence suggested. We're looking at 60-plus hostiles, maybe 70. Can we confirm the target's present? Park asked. Not from here. We need closer recon. Chen lowered her binoculars. Voss, you're with me? Rodriguez, Williams, Park, establish security perimeter. Morrison, set up comms. If this goes sideways, I want extraction options ready. Ma'am, Elena said quietly, I should do the recon solo. Chen turned. Explain. 2 people are twice as visible. I know this terrain. I know how to move through it without being seen. And if something goes wrong, better to lose 1 operator than 2. You're not expendable, Voss. Neither are you, ma'am, but I'm the one who's already survived falling off a mountain here. I'm the one who knows what this place does to people. Let me use that. Chen considered. You're volunteering to go alone into an enemy base looking for a high-value target. That's not recon. That's suicide with extra steps. It's what I'm trained for. Park leaned in. She's right, Captain. Solo infiltration, minimal footprint. It's actually the smarter play. Chen looked at Elena for a long moment. If you get compromised, we extract immediately. No heroics, no last stands. You get made, you run, we cover your exfil and abort the mission. Clear? Clear. 1 hour. You're not back in 60 minutes. We're coming for you. Elena checked her gear. Sidearm, knife. Radio on silent, emergency beacon active. She left her rifle. Grace was a precision instrument, not a close quarters weapon. If she needed to shoot her way out, the mission was already failed. 1 hour, she confirmed. Then she moved into the valley. The descent was careful, deliberate, every placement of every foot calculated to minimize sound and visibility. Elena used terrain like camouflage, staying in dead ground where line of sight was broken, moving when the wind gusted to mask noise. 30 minutes to cover 800 meters. Glacial pace. Necessary pace. She reached the perimeter of the enemy base at 0827. Found an observation position behind a fallen tree. Became perfectly still, breathing shallow, heartbeat controlled. The base was active. Soldiers moving between tents. Supplies being staged. Weapons being cleaned. The routine maintenance of a military operation preparing for something big. Elena glassed faces, looking for the target. The intelligence photos had been clear. Middle-aged commander, distinctive scar on his left cheek, usually traveled with 2 bodyguards. She didn't see him. Shifted position slightly. Checked the command tent. Larger structure, radio antennas, guards posted at the entrance. Still nothing. Then movement. 3 figures exiting a tent on the east side. 2 large men flanking a smaller figure whose face was there. Target acquired. The commander moved with authority, gesturing as he spoke to his subordinates. Elena watched him through her scope, memorizing his patterns, his mannerisms, his security details positioning. This was valuable intelligence, confirming his presence, mapping his routine, identifying vulnerabilities. She needed to observe for at least 10 more minutes, build a complete picture before extracting. That's when she saw the second thing. In the corner of the compound, partially hidden by supply crates, was a cluster of American equipment, radios, weapons, gear that looked recently captured. And sitting on top of it like a trophy was a pack she recognized. Her pack. The one she'd lost when they'd pushed her off the cliff. Elena's blood went cold. The enemy had found it, had recovered it from the crevice or the surrounding area. And if they had her pack, they had her identification, her personal effects, her notebook, the small field journal where she'd kept tactical observations, patrol notes, sketches of terrain features and defensive positions. Standard practice for scouts. Nothing classified, but enough information that a competent intelligence officer could extract patterns, routines, vulnerabilities. They'd been using her notes to plan their next attack. Everything she'd observed and recorded over 6 weeks at Black Hollow Pass, handed to them on a silver platter by the fall that was supposed to kill her. She keyed her radio, whispered, Ghost 1, Ghost 6, have visual confirmation of target. Also found compromised intelligence materials. American field notebook in enemy possession. Chen's voice came back. Source? Mine. Lost during the initial incident. Enemy appears to be using it for operational planning. Silence on the radio. Then, can you recover it? Elena assessed. The pack was 50 meters into the compound. Guards between her position and the target. No clear approach that didn't risk exposure. Negative. Too many hostiles. Recovery would compromise the mission. Then we factor it into mission planning. Note the location. Continue observation. 30 minutes to extraction window. Elena settled back into position, continued watching the commander. He was reviewing maps now, pointing at positions that Elena recognized, the outposts surrounding Black Hollow Pass, planning the simultaneous assault Colonel Reeves had mentioned. They were going to hit multiple sites at once, using the intelligence from her notebook to time their attacks perfectly. Unless ghost units stopped them here. The commander finished his briefing, dismissed his subordinates, started walking toward the command tent. Elena tracked him through her scope, calculated the shot she would take if this was the mission. Range, 584 meters. Wind, minimal, valley creating a relative dead zone. Clear sight picture, high percentage shot, but it wasn't the mission yet. They needed more intelligence, needed to confirm his schedule, his security patterns, his... The radio in her pocket vibrated. Emergency signal. She pulled it out, saw Morrison's urgent message. Patrol inbound your position. 200 meters northeast. Move now. Elena looked. Saw the patrol. 6 soldiers sweeping through the forest in her direction. Professional search pattern. They knew someone was there or suspected it. Had they spotted her approach? Detected her presence somehow? Didn't matter. She had maybe 90 seconds before they reached her position. She moved. Not toward her extraction route that would lead the patrol directly to Ghost Unit's position. Instead, she moved laterally, using the terrain to break line of sight, angling away from both the patrol and her team. Behind her, she heard Russian voices, closer than they should be. She dropped into a drainage ditch, pressed herself against the frozen earth, controlled her breathing until it was barely perceptible. Boots crunched through snow 10 feet away. Radio chatter. The patrol was spreading out, searching systematically. One of them stopped directly above her position. Elena's hand moved to her knife. If he looked down, if he saw her, she'd have maybe 2 seconds to kill him before he could alert the others. And then she'd be running, fighting, dying in the same valley that had already tried to claim her once. The soldier stood there for an eternity that lasted 15 seconds. Then his radio crackled, someone calling him to check a different sector. He moved on. Elena waited 5 full minutes before moving. Then she extracted slowly, carefully, using every piece of cover the terrain offered. She reached the rally point at 09:14, 16 minutes late. The team was in defensive positions, weapons trained on her approach vector. Cutting it close, Ghost 6, Chen said. Got delayed. Patrol almost walked over me. Did they make you? Negative. Pure luck they didn't. Elena pulled out her tablet, showed Chen the photos she'd taken of the enemy compound. Target confirmed. Security is tight, but predictable. The compound is preparing for major operations. I'm estimating 72 hours before they launch. Chen reviewed the images. And the notebook? Visible in these frames? They're definitely using it for intelligence. I saw the commander reviewing maps that corresponded to positions I'd noted. So they know our defensive patterns. They know what our defensive patterns were 6 weeks ago. But yes, essentially. Elena zoomed in on one image. This is our best approach vector for the actual hit. Eastern ridge, wind in our favor, clear sight lines to the command area. I can make the shot from 740 meters. Rodriguez leaned in. That's a long poke. I've made longer, in worse conditions. While falling off a mountain, we know. He grinned. You keep bringing that up. Because it's the best proof of concept I've got. Chen studied the tactical map. We need more intel before we commit to direct action. Williams Park. I want you two to establish an LP/OP on that eastern ridge. 48 hours of continuous observation. Build me a pattern of life analysis on the target. When does he move? Where does he go? Who's with him? She turned to Elena. You and Rodriguez are going back tonight to recover that notebook. Ma'am? If the enemy is using your intelligence to plan attacks, we need to know exactly what information they have, and we need to deny them that resource. Chen's expression was steel. I know it's risky, but it's necessary. Can you do it? Elena thought about the compound, the guards, the 50 meters of open ground between cover and the pack. We can do it, she said. Good. Plan for a 0-200 insertion. Morrison, start building our exfil options. I want routes, timelines, and contingencies. If this goes loud, I want to know how we get out alive. The team dispersed to their tasks. Elena sat with Rodriguez, mapping the recovery mission. This is insane, Rodriguez said quietly. You know that, right? Most of our job is insane. This is just more obviously insane. Fair point. He traced a route on the map. Approach from the west, use the supply depot for concealment. If we time it right, we can slip in during the guard rotation at 02:30. They'll have patrols, random sweeps. So we avoid them. We're ghosts, remember? That's literally our job description. Elena looked at the map, at the valley that held so many bad memories, and felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, not confidence, just cold acceptance. She was going back into the dark, back into danger, back into the place that had tried to erase her. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, she had a team. And this time, she was choosing to go. That made all the difference. 0200 came with clouds that obscured the moon. Perfect conditions for infiltration. Terrible conditions for shooting. Elena filed that away as she and Rodriguez moved through the darkness toward the enemy compound. They'd cached most of their gear at the rally point, traveled light, sidearms, knives, suppressed weapons for emergencies. The mission was stealth, not combat. Get in, recover the notebook, get out. Simple. Simple plans failed the fastest, but sometimes simple was all you had. They reached the compound perimeter at 0237. The guard rotation was happening exactly as Elena had predicted. 2 sentries moving clockwise, leaving a 3-minute gap in coverage on the western side. Rodriguez keyed his radio. Ghost 1, Ghost 2, and Ghost 6 beginning approach. Chen's voice. Copy. You have eyes on target? Elena glassed the area, found her pack still sitting on the supply crates. Confirmed. Target visible. No immediate hostiles in the area. Execute when ready. Radio silence from here. Signal when you're clear. They moved during the gap, covered the 50 meters in 40 seconds, using shadows and stillness like camouflage. Reached the supply crates. Elena grabbed her pack. The notebook wasn't there. She opened every pocket, checked every compartment, found her personal effects, her spare ammunition, her emergency rations. No notebook. Problem? Rodriguez whispered. It's not here. They must have removed it. So where? Voices, coming from the command tent 30 meters away. Elena and Rodriguez dropped behind the crates, became invisible. Through the gaps in the supply stack, Elena could see 2 officers exiting the tent, one holding a familiar green field notebook. Her notebook. They were discussing it, pointing at pages, making notes. Then they headed toward a different tent. The intelligence section, probably, where they were analyzing the information. Rodriguez looked at Elena. She could see the calculation in his eyes. They could abort now, extract clean, report the failure. Or they could press. Elena made the decision. Hand signals. I'll go, you cover. Rodriguez started to protest, stopped, nodded, positioned himself where he could provide overwatch. Elena moved like smoke through the compound, every step placed with precision, every breath controlled, every sense focused on staying invisible. She reached the intelligence tent, heard voices inside. 2 officers, maybe 3, all focused on the notebook, analyzing tactical data. She couldn't go in. Too many hostiles, too much risk. But the tent had a back entrance, supply flap, probably used for equipment access. She circled around, found it loosely tied, slipped her knife through the gap, cut the binding silently, peered inside. 3 officers hunched over a table, the notebook open between them, maps spread out, annotations being made. They were building a complete intelligence picture of American defensive operations. And sitting on a shelf behind them, forgotten for the moment, a radio. American issue, probably recovered from the same site as her pack. Elena made another calculation. She could grab the radio, maybe compromise their communications advantage. But the notebook was the priority. Had to be. She waited. Watched the officers work. They were methodical, thorough, would be at this for hours, unless something interrupted them. Elena pulled out her emergency signal device, the one designed to broadcast a GPS ping for rescue. She activated it, set it to maximum power, then threw it as far as she could toward the eastern perimeter. 30 seconds later, alarms started blaring. The signal had been detected, interpreted as an American beacon in enemy territory. The officers scrambled, grabbed weapons, ran toward the disturbance, left the notebook on the table. Elena slipped into the tent, grabbed the notebook, grabbed the radio for good measure, started to leave, and came face to face with a soldier entering through the main entrance. For one frozen second, they stared at each other. The soldier's hand moved toward his weapon. Elena's moved faster. Her knife took him in the throat before he could make a sound. She caught his body, lowered it quietly, her heart hammering. First blood. The mission had just gone from covert recovery to something darker. She keyed her radio, broke silence. Ghost 2, Ghost 6. I'm compromised. I'm coming out hot. Get ready to move. Rodriguez's voice. Copy, I've got your 6. Elena exited the tent, the notebook and radio secured in her pack. The compound was in chaos now, soldiers running toward the eastern perimeter, where her signal device was broadcasting its useless cry for help. She moved through the confusion, using panic as concealment, reached the supply crates. Rodriguez was there, weapon ready. We need to go, now. They ran, not the careful infiltration movement from before, full tactical sprint, putting distance between themselves and the compound as fast as possible. Behind them, shouting, the body had been discovered. Ghost 1, Ghost 2, Rodriguez panted into his radio. Exfil in progress. We're burned. I say again, we are burned. And Chen's voice. Copy. Rally Point Alpha. Weapons free on pursuit. They ran through the darkness, terrain trying to kill them with every step. Elena's ankle screamed protest, but she ignored it. Pain was just information. Survival was the mission now. Gunfire erupted behind them, muzzle flashes in the dark. The enemy was pursuing, and they had numbers. Rodriguez stopped, turned, fired controlled bursts that bought them seconds. Elena did the same, laying down suppressive fire while Rodriguez moved, leapfrogging back toward safety. They reached Rally Point Alpha at 0324. The rest of Ghost Unit was there, defensive positions established. We've got company, Elena gasped. Maybe 20 hostiles, 300 meters back. Chen didn't hesitate. Williams, Morrison, lay down suppression. Park, Rodriguez, prepare smoke. We're extracting to Rally Point Bravo. Move in 2 minutes. The team executed like a machine. Suppressive fire. Smoke grenades creating artificial fog. Controlled withdrawal under fire. They moved through the wilderness with enemy pursuit crashing through the forest behind them. But Ghost Unit was trained for this. Every movement choreographed, every position supporting the next. At 0503, they lost the pursuit in a narrow canyon. At 0647, they reached the extraction point. At 0712, the helicopter pulled them out of enemy territory while dawn turned the mountains gold. Elena sat in the helicopter, the recovered notebook in her hands, blood still drying on her knife. She'd gone back to the valley that had tried to erase her, had infiltrated an enemy compound, had killed a man with her hands, had recovered intelligence that would save American lives. And she'd done it all without hesitation, without fear, without breaking. The enhanced marksmanship program had built her to be a weapon. Tonight, she'd proven they'd succeeded. But the debriefing lasted 6 hours. Colonel Reeves, Captain Chen, and a room full of intelligence analysts dissecting every decision, every moment, every piece of information they'd recovered. The notebook was gold. Detailed observations of defensive patterns, shift rotations, weak points in the perimeter. Everything the enemy needed to plan a successful assault. This confirms our assessment, Reeves said. They were planning to hit 5 outposts simultaneously in 72 hours. With this intelligence, they had a high probability of success. Had, Chen emphasized. Now we know their timeline. We can reinforce those positions, and we still have the option to eliminate their commander before they launch. About that, Reeves pulled up satellite imagery. The compound went on full alert after your exfil. They've increased security, tripled patrols, and moved the commander to a hardened position. Direct assault is off the table. So we wait them out. So we adapt. Reeves looked at Elena. Sergeant Voss, you've been quiet. Thoughts? Elena had been quiet because she'd been thinking, processing, calculating. The commander's paranoid now, she said. He knows we're in the area, knows we've compromised his security. He's going to be careful, protected. Exactly, which makes him nearly impossible to target. Unless we give him a reason to expose himself. The room went silent. Reeves leaned forward. Explain. Elena stood, walked to the map. He thinks he still has operational advantage because of the intelligence in my notebook. He doesn't know we've recovered it, so he's going to proceed with his attack plan, just with enhanced security. And if we let him think he still has that advantage, If we leave our defensive positions exactly as they were when I was at Black Hollow Pass, he'll commit to the assault. He'll have to leave his compound to coordinate the attack. That's when he's vulnerable. Chen caught on. You're suggesting we bait him, use ourselves as the lure. I'm suggesting we give him what he wants, a target he thinks he can hit. And when he comes out to watch it burn, we take him. Reeves studied the map. That puts American soldiers at risk. The outposts would be genuinely vulnerable if we maintain the old defensive positions. So we reinforce them secretly. Move assets into position but keep the external appearance the same. The enemy thinks they're hitting soft targets. Instead, they walk into a kill zone. Elena traced positions on the map. And while their assault forces are being destroyed, their commander is exposed, watching from his observation post. That's when Ghost Unit takes the shot. You mean that's when you take the shot? Yes, sir, that's when I take the shot. The room debated for another hour. Risks, benefits, probability of success. In the end, Reeves made the call. We execute Sergeant Voss's plan, but with modifications. We reinforce Black Hollow Pass specifically. That's the most strategic target. The other outposts get enhanced but covert security. If the enemy commits, we bleed them. If they abort, we've lost nothing. He looked at Elena. And you, Sergeant, are going to be exactly where you were when this started, on that ridge, waiting for the impossible shot. Elena felt something cold and certain settle in her chest. When do we move? 48 hours. That gives us time to position assets without alerting the enemy. Reeves stood. Ghost Unit, you've done exceptional work. Now, let's finish it. The team dispersed. Elena stayed behind, staring at the map, at the ridge where they'd pushed her off, where she'd nearly died, where she'd become something else. Chen approached. You good with this? Going back to that exact position? I'm good with finishing what I started. That's not what I asked. Elena turned. What do you want me to say, ma'am? That I'm scared? That the thought of standing on that ridge again makes me want to run? Fine, I'm terrified, but I'm going anyway because the mission requires it and because I need to prove to myself that I'm not defined by what happened to me. Being defined by trauma isn't weakness. No, but being controlled by it is. Elena picked up her gear. I went into that valley tonight and I functioned, operated at peak efficiency, killed when necessary. The training works, ma'am. The enhanced marksmanship program built me to do impossible things. I'm just living up to their investment. She left before Chen could respond, before anyone could see the cracks forming behind the armor she'd built. Because Rodriguez had been right. She was damaged, was functioning through trauma rather than processing it, was using the mission as an excuse to avoid dealing with everything that had happened. But she couldn't afford to deal with it, not yet. Not until the mission was over and the threat was eliminated, and she'd proven once and for all that Elena Voss was more than the sum of her injuries. 48 hours. Then she'd stand on that ridge again, face the valley that had tried to erase her. And this time, she'd be the one doing the erasing. The final preparations blurred together. Equipment checks, range time, weather analysis. Ghost Unit moved with the quiet efficiency of professionals who knew the stakes. On the last night before insertion, Elena found herself in the chapel. Not praying, she'd never had much use for faith, but sitting in the silence, trying to find some kind of peace. Morrison, the original Morrison, from Black Hollow Pass, found her there. He'd been transferred to Fort Bragg as part of a support unit, had heard about the mission through the rumor network that connected all soldiers. Heard you're going back, he said, sitting beside her. Word travels. It's a small army, especially for legends. He smiled slightly. That's what they're calling you now. The ghost of Black Hollow Pass. The shooter who saved an outpost with 18 rounds while bleeding out in a crevice. I'm not a legend. I'm just a soldier who did her job. No, you're a soldier who did the impossible. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. The guys wanted me to tell you something. The ones who were there. We've been watching what happened after. The investigation, the trials, the truth coming out about Davis and Marks and all of it. And we're sorry, not just for what happened that night, but for all of it. The weeks of isolation, the casual cruelty, the way we treated you like a problem instead of an asset. Morrison looked at his hands. You were right about everything, and we punished you for it. That's on us. Apologies don't change what happened. No, but they're still owed. He stood up. There's something else. The unit, what's left of it, we're taking up a collection, trying to fund a memorial for the 8 we lost. We want your name on it, first name. The one who saw the threat and tried to warn us. Elena felt something break in her chest. I don't need memorials. It's not about what you need, it's about what's true. Morrison moved toward the door. Good luck tomorrow, Voss. Kill that bastard for us. He left. Elena sat alone in the silence, feeling the weight of recognition she'd wanted for so long arriving exactly when she'd learned to live without it. Tomorrow she'd stand on that ridge, would face the valley one more time, would take a shot that would either end the threat or haunt her forever. But tonight she let herself feel something other than cold efficiency. Let herself acknowledge the scared scout who'd been pushed off a cliff and the weapon she'd become in the aftermath. Both were true. Both were her. And tomorrow, both would be enough. The helicopter dropped Ghost Unit onto the ridge at 0342, exactly where Elena had stood 3 months earlier when the world had tried to erase her. The wind cut through her gear with the same teeth, the same malice. The stars overhead were sharp and cold and indifferent. She stepped off the skid onto frozen ground and felt memory crash over her like a wave. This spot. This exact spot where Marx had shoved her backward, where gravity had taken over, where everything had changed. You good? Chen asked, hand on her shoulder. Elena nodded. Didn't trust her voice yet. The team moved into position. Williams and Park established security on the flanks. Morrison set up communications. Rodriguez prepped backup equipment, and Elena moved to the cliff edge, looked down into the darkness where she'd fallen. The crevice was invisible from here, just shadow and distance. But she knew it was there, could feel it pulling at her like unfinished business. Go 6, focus up. Chen's voice cut through the memories. We've got work to do. Elena turned away from the edge, began setting up her shooting position. The mission required perfection, and perfection required presence. The past could wait. They worked through the pre-dawn hours with mechanical efficiency, range cards, wind calls, backup positions. Every contingency mapped, every variable accounted for. By 0600, they were ready. The valley below was waking up, lights flickering on in the outpost, guard rotations beginning, everything normal, routine, vulnerable, exactly as the enemy expected. Except this time, 200 American soldiers were hidden in reinforced positions throughout the compound. Machine guns behind concealment, mortar teams dug into hardened bunkers, quick reaction forces staged and ready. Black Hollow Pass looked like easy prey. It was actually a loaded trap. Ghost 1, all elements report ready, Morrison said quietly. We're set. Chen keyed her radio to the command net. Overwatch in position, ready to execute. Colonel Reeves's voice came back. Copy Ghost 1, Assam. Intel suggests enemy movement beginning in approximately 4 hours. Confirm you can maintain position. Affirmative, we can hold. Then we wait. All elements, weapons hold. We let them commit. We let them think they're winning. Then we close the jaws. Elena settled into her shooting position behind Grace. The rifle felt like coming home. Familiar weight, known tolerances, the one constant in a world that kept shifting. She glassed the valley methodically, mapping terrain, noting changes from 3 months ago. There, the enemy compound, 8 miles distant, tiny at this range, barely visible even through her scope, but she knew what was there, knew the commander would eventually show himself. The waiting began. Hours crawled past. The sun rose, turned snow to gold, climbed toward noon. Elena stayed perfectly still, breathing slow, conserving energy. Beside her, Chen monitored radio traffic. Rodriguez maintained security. The rest of the team rotated through brief rest periods. At 11:34, Morrison whispered, movement, enemy compound, multiple vehicles staging. Elena glassed the area, saw trucks being loaded, soldiers forming up. The assault was beginning. Ghost 1 to all elements, Chen transmitted. Enemy forces mobilizing. Estimate 30 minutes to contact. All units stand by. The tension ratcheted up. Elena could feel it in her chest, her hands, the space between heartbeats. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. At 12:07, the first enemy truck left the compound, then another, then 6 more. They were committing heavy forces, confident in their intelligence, certain of victory. They drove toward Black Hollow Pass like it was already conquered. Elena tracked them through her scope, counted vehicles, estimated personnel. Somewhere between 80 and 90 combatants, more than they'd expected, enough to overwhelm the outpost if it was actually as vulnerable as they believed. "They're all in," Rodriguez murmured. "They're really doing it." "Let them," Chen said. "The more they commit, the more we destroy." At 12:43, the enemy convoy reached the staging area 2 miles from the outpost. Soldiers dismounted, officers began coordinating the assault. Everything precise, professional, exactly according to plan. Their plan. The one based on Elena's stolen notebook. "Ghost 1 to command," Chen transmitted. "Enemy forces staged. Ready to initiate assault." "Copy, Ghost 1. Hold position. Wait for my mark." They waited. Watched the enemy organize. Watched them move into attack positions. Watched them prepare to hit what they thought was an easy target. Then Elena saw him, on a ridge overlooking the staging area, maybe half a mile behind his assault forces, the commander. Standing with binoculars, observing his troops, positioned where he could watch the entire battle unfold. "Target acquired," Elena said quietly. "Enemy commander, observation post, bearing 274, range calculating." She worked the math. Distance, elevation, wind. The numbers came together in her head with the automatic precision of 10,000 repetitions. Range 1,389 meters. Rodriguez inhaled sharply. "That's nearly a mile." "I know." "Invariable wind." "I know." "With a target that might move at any second." "I know." Elena kept her voice level. "It's the shot." Chen studied the position through her own optics. "Can you make it?" Elena thought about the enhanced marksmanship program, about 3 months of training that had rebuilt her from the ground up, about the second phase that had taught her to shoot through impossible conditions, about the night in a crevice when she'd made shots that shouldn't have been possible and saved lives that weren't supposed to be saved. "Yes." "How sure?" "Sure enough to take it." Chen made her decision. "Ghost 1 to command. We have visual on primary target. Request weapons free." Reeves's response was immediate. "Denied. Target is secondary. Primary mission is destroying the assault force. You take that shot now, you alert them before we've sprung the trap." "Sir, if we wait, we might lose the target entirely." "Then that's the risk we take. You do not fire until the assault begins. That's an order." Chen looked at Elena. "You heard him. We wait." Elena kept the commander in her crosshairs, watched him gesture to his subordinates, watched him point toward Black Hollow Pass with confidence that came from thinking he knew the enemy's weaknesses. He had no idea he was standing in the crosshairs of the weapon they'd tried to eliminate. At 13:11, the assault began. Enemy forces advanced on Black Hollow Pass with coordinated precision. Mortar teams laid down covering fire. Infantry moved in tactical formation. Breaching teams prepared to blow the wire. They hit the perimeter at 13:14. That's when the trap closed. Machine guns opened up from concealed positions. Mortars fired from bunkers the enemy didn't know existed. The vulnerable outpost transformed into a fortress, and the assault force walked straight into overlapping fields of fire. The valley erupted into chaos. Enemy soldiers scrambled for cover. Officers shouted orders. The carefully planned attack disintegrated into desperate survival. They'd expected soft resistance. Instead, they'd found prepared defenses and overwhelming firepower. Through her scope, Elena watched the commander's expression change from confidence to confusion to horror. He was realizing what had happened, realizing his intelligence was compromised, realizing he'd walked his forces into a slaughter. "Ghost 1 to command," Chen transmitted. "Assault force engaged and being destroyed. Request weapons free on primary target." "Stand by." "Sir, he's going to run. We need to take him now." "I said stand by!" The commander was shouting into his radio, gesturing frantically. His bodyguards were pulling him toward a vehicle, extraction, getting him out before the Americans realized where he was. Elena tracked him. Range, 1,389 meters. Wind, gusting 15 to 18 miles per hour from the northeast. Target, moving, partially obscured, 60 seconds from being gone forever. Ghost One? I heard you, Voss. Wait for the order. The commander reached the vehicle. Door opening. 30 seconds. Chen, he's leaving. I know. If we don't take the shot, I said I know! 20 seconds. The commander was climbing in. The bodyguards were following. The door was closing. Then Reeves's voice. Ghost One, weapons free. Take the shot. Elena didn't need to be told twice. She settled into the position she'd built, made her body stone, made her breathing glass, read the wind through falling snow and dancing ice crystals, and the way the air moved across a valley she knew better than anyone alive. The commander was in the vehicle. Door closing, glass between her bullet and his skull. But vehicle glass was predictable. She knew how it would deflect her round, knew the adjustment needed. She held for wind, held for distance, held for the vehicle motion, held for every variable that turned shooting into something between science and faith. The world compressed to a single point of focus. The crosshairs, the target, the space between heartbeats where everything else disappeared. She exhaled, held, squeezed. Grace kicked against her shoulder. The round flew. For 3 eternal seconds, physics and will wrestled in the air. Then the vehicle's rear window exploded. The commander's head snapped forward. The truck swerved, crashed into a tree, stopped. Target down, Elena said quietly. Confirmed kill. The radio erupted with voices, confirmation, verification, disbelief that she'd made the shot. But Elena was already scanning for threats, already moving to her next task. The mission wasn't over just because the primary target was eliminated. Below, the battle continued. Enemy forces were breaking, running, dying. American casualties were minimal. 3 wounded, none critical. The trap had worked perfectly. At 1347, the enemy stopped fighting. The survivors threw down weapons, raised hands, surrendered to forces that had appeared from nowhere and destroyed them. At 1401, Reeves's voice came through. All elements, ceasefire. Battle is over. We won. The valley went quiet. Smoke drifted through the trees. The snow was stained with red. But Black Hollow Pass still stood, the flag still flying, and the threat that had been building for months was eliminated. Elena safed her weapon. Let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 months. It was done. The extraction happened at sunset. Ghost Unit rappelled down from the ridge, not the cliff face where Elena had fallen, but a controlled descent on the opposite side. Professional. Safe. Everything the first time hadn't been. At the bottom, Colonel Reeves was waiting with a security detail and transport vehicles. Hell of a shot, Sergeant Voss, he said. We confirmed the kill. Enemy commander is dead. His assault force is destroyed or captured. The threat to this entire region just evaporated because you put one bullet exactly where it needed to be. The team put me in position, sir. I just pulled the trigger. Don't diminish what you did. That was a world-class shot under extreme conditions. The kind of shooting that gets written about in training manuals. Reeves gestured to the vehicles. Debrief back at Bragg, then you've earned some downtime. But before they could move, Captain Driscoll appeared from one of the transports. He looked older, grayer, diminished by the reprimand that had stalled his career. Sergeant Voss. A word? Elena glanced at Chen, who nodded. She followed Driscoll away from the group. He didn't speak immediately, just stood looking at the valley, at Black Hollow Pass in the distance, at the ridge where everything had changed. I should have listened to you, he said finally. 3 months ago, when you told me the valley was quiet, when you warned me something was wrong, I should have listened. Yes, sir, you should have. 8 men died because I didn't. 8 families got notification that their sons or brothers or fathers weren't coming home. That's on me. He turned to face her. But you still saved us. Even after we failed you, betrayed you, tried to erase you, you still did your job. Why? Elena thought about that, about the choice she'd made in the crevice, about deciding to protect people who'd thrown her away. Because being better than them meant doing the right thing even when they didn't deserve it. Because I'm a soldier, and soldiers protect people, even the ones who don't protect us back. Driscoll nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for that night, but for all of it. The culture that made you invisible. The command climate that let Marks and the others treat you like a problem. The system that punished you for being exceptional. He paused. I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. It won't fix what happened, but it's the least you deserve. I don't need medals, sir. Maybe not. But the Army needs to recognize what you did, needs to acknowledge that we almost destroyed our best asset because we were too arrogant to see what was right in front of us. He offered his hand. You're going to do great things in SOCOM, Voss. They're lucky to have you. Elena shook his hand, felt something close, not forgiveness, but completion. The chapter was ending. The new one was beginning. She returned to Ghost Unit. They loaded into the transports and drove away from Black Hollow Pass as night fell across the mountains. Elena looked back once, saw the ridge silhouetted against the darkening sky, saw the valley where she'd nearly died and then learned to be dangerous. She didn't need to come back here again. Didn't need to prove anything else. The place had tried to erase her. Instead, she'd made it part of her legend. That was enough. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in a formal ceremony room at Fort Bragg. Full dress uniform, medals gleaming, the Silver Star being pinned to her chest by a general whose name she'd recognized from textbooks. The citation was read aloud. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an armed enemy, Sergeant Voss displayed extraordinary heroism while severely wounded and isolated from friendly forces. Her actions directly resulted in the preservation of American lives and the defeat of a coordinated enemy assault. Words that turned blood and cold and impossible shots into official language. Words that would go in her permanent record, follow her through her career, maybe outlive her. The general stepped back, saluted. Well done, Sergeant. Elena saluted back. Thank you, sir. The ceremony ended. People approached to congratulate her. Officers she'd never met. Soldiers who'd heard the stories. Even Morrison from the original Black Hollow Pass unit, now serving in a support role, his eyes wet with something that might have been pride. But the person Elena was looking for was standing in the back. Master Sergeant Walsh, her team leader, the woman who'd tested her harder than anyone since the enhanced marksmanship program. Elena made her way through the crowd. Walsh handed her a cup of coffee. Hell of a way to start your career in SOCOM, Walsh said. Silver Star on your first mission. Some people serve 20 years and never get that recognition. Some people serve 20 years and do more valuable work than I did in one night. Medals are just metal. Spoken like someone who has one, Walsh smiled. But you're right. The real value is what you do next. The mission we just completed was important. The next one will be harder. The one after that will be worse. That's the job. I know. Do you? Because special operations isn't about hero moments. It's about doing impossible things over and over until they kill you or you retire. It's about sacrifice nobody sees and missions nobody can talk about and losing friends to enemies nobody admits exist. Walsh studied her. You signed up for this knowing you'd be exceptional at it. But being exceptional means being used hard. Means being sent where others can't go. Means carrying burdens most soldiers never have to touch. I can handle it. I know you can. That's not what worries me. Walsh set down her coffee. What worries me is that you'll handle it so well that you forget to be human, that you'll become nothing but the weapon the enhanced marksmanship program built, that you'll wake up 10 years from now and realize you've been operating for so long that you don't remember how to stop. Elena felt those words land somewhere deep. What are you saying? I'm saying take the win, celebrate the medal, be proud of what you did, but also deal with what it cost. Talk to someone about falling off that cliff. Process the betrayal. Acknowledge the trauma. Walsh put a hand on her shoulder. You're the best shooter I've ever seen. But you're also a person who survived something terrible. Both those things can be true. Both those things should be true. I'm fine. You're functional. That's different than fine. Walsh squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. Team training resumes Monday. Oh, 600. Don't be late. She walked away, leaving Elena alone with her medal and her coffee and the weight of truth she wasn't ready to examine yet. But the party happened that night. Ghost Unit and various SOCOM personnel, unofficial gathering at a bar off base where everyone could pretend rank didn't matter and talk about things that official channels wouldn't allow. Elena sat with her team, listening to Rodriguez tell increasingly exaggerated stories about the mission. The notebook recovery had become a daring midnight raid. The commander's shot had become literally impossible conditions, like shooting through a hurricane. I was there, Elena protested. It wasn't a hurricane. It was spiritually a hurricane, Rodriguez insisted, and it makes a better story. Park raised his glass. To go 6, the shooter who turns bad situations into legends. They drank. Elena felt something warm in her chest that had nothing to do with alcohol. This was what she'd wanted at Black Hollow Pass. This acceptance, this belonging. She'd found it, just not where she'd expected. Captain Chen approached. Voss? Outside. Need to talk. They stepped into the cold. Chen lit a cigarette, offered one to Elena, who declined. I got word from Colonel Reeves, Chen said. The enhanced marksmanship program is officially reactivating. They want you to help design the curriculum. Share what worked, what didn't, how to integrate graduates into teams without the friction you experienced. I'm not qualified to teach. You're qualified to tell the truth about what it's actually like. That's more valuable than any instructor certification. Chen exhaled smoke into the night. They're also offering you a choice. You can stay with Ghost Unit and continue operations, or you can move into the training program, help shape the next generation of precision shooters. What do you think I should do? I think that's not my call. Chen studied her. But I'll tell you this, you're one of the best operators I've ever worked with. You make Ghost Unit better. I want you to stay. But if training is where you can do the most good, where you can prevent other talented soldiers from being destroyed by units that don't understand them, then maybe that's where you belong. Elena looked at the sky. Stars were invisible here, drowned by city lights. Not like the mountains, where everything was sharp and clear and brutal. Can I think about it? You've got a week. Then I need an answer. Chen stubbed out her cigarette. For what it's worth, whatever you choose will be the right choice. You've earned that trust. She went back inside. Elena stayed in the cold, thinking about paths and choices and futures that branched in different directions. She could stay operational, keep doing the impossible, keep being the weapon they'd built her to be. Or she could help build better weapons, teach other soldiers not just how to shoot, but how to survive units that feared their excellence, how to navigate the politics and prejudice and isolation that came with being exceptional. Both had value. Both would cost her something. She thought about her father, about the career he'd had, always moving between units that didn't quite know what to do with him, always excellent, always alone. He'd died without changing the system, without making it better for the people who came after. Maybe she could do what he couldn't. The week passed in training, missions planning, routine operations that let her avoid the decision. But Saturday morning, Elena found herself at the military cemetery, standing in front of a memorial wall where her father's name was inscribed. Sergeant First Class Thomas Voss, killed in action, Kandahar Province. She traced the letters with her finger, felt the weight of legacy pressing down. I became what you were, she said quietly. Maybe even better. The enhanced marksmanship program gave me tools you never had. I can do things that would have seemed impossible to you. The stone didn't answer. The dead never did. But I don't want to die like you did, alone on a rooftop because my team didn't protect me. I don't want to spend my whole career moving between units that fear what I can do. She paused. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to teach. I'm going to help the next generation be as good as me, but also help them survive it. Help them find teams that deserve them. Still no answer, but Elena felt something ease in her chest, like permission she hadn't known she needed. She saluted the wall, turned, walked away with purpose. Monday morning, she told Captain Chen her decision. I'm taking the training position. Ghost Unit deserves someone who's all in, and I need to do this. Need to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to the next exceptional soldier who gets thrown into a unit that can't handle them. Chen nodded. I respect that. You'll be missed, but you're making the right call. Am I? You're making your call, that's what matters. Chen offered her hand. You ever want to come back to operations, Ghost Unit will have a place for you. This isn't goodbye. It's see you later. They shook. Elena felt the transition happening. Operator to instructor, weapon to teacher, survivor to guide. It felt right. Bullshit. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of 12 candidates for the Enhanced Marksmanship Program Phase 2. They were the best shooters from Phase 1, the ones who demonstrated not just skill but the mental fortitude to operate in impossible conditions. They looked at her with a mix of respect and fear. She'd become a legend in the 6 months since Black Hollow Pass, the ghost shooter, the impossible shot, the soldier who'd turned betrayal into victory. "I'm Master Sergeant Elena Voss," she began, "and I'm here to tell you something your other instructors won't. This program is going to make you dangerous. It's going to give you capabilities that most soldiers will never possess. You're going to become weapons." She paced in front of them. But weapons don't survive alone. Weapons need teams that understand them, support systems that value them, command structures that know how to deploy them effectively. She stopped, made eye contact with each candidate. "Some of you will graduate this program and find yourselves in units that fear your excellence, that see you as threats instead of assets, that will try to break you because they can't understand you." The candidates shifted uncomfortably. When that happens, you have choices. You can bend yourself into shapes that fit their boxes. You can hide what you're capable of to make others comfortable. Or you can stay true to what you are and find the right team. She paused. "I spent months trying to fit. It nearly killed me. Don't make my mistake." She pulled up images on the screen behind her. Black Hollow Pass. The ridge. The valley. "This is where I learned that being exceptional isn't a flaw. It's a responsibility. You're being given capabilities that can save lives, that can turn impossible situations into victories, but only if you survive long enough to use them." One candidate raised his hand. "How do we know we'll survive?" "You don't. That's the truth. Nobody wants to admit. Some of you won't make it. Some of you will be destroyed by units that don't deserve you. Some of you will die on missions that never get acknowledged." Elena met his eyes. "But some of you will find the right teams, the right commanders, the right missions, and you'll do things that matter." She advanced the presentation. "This program isn't just about making you better shooters. It's about preparing you for what comes after. The politics, the prejudice, the isolation. We're going to teach you how to navigate that, how to advocate for yourself, how to recognize toxic environments before they destroy you." Another hand. "Is that what happened to you? Toxic environment?" "Yes. I was placed in a unit that saw my skills as a threat, that punished me for being right, that ultimately tried to kill me when I wouldn't shut up and disappear." Elena's voice was steady. "But I survived, and I used what they did to me to become something they couldn't stop. That's the lesson. Whatever tries to break you, use it, transform it, make it part of your strength." The candidates were listening now, really listening. "You're going to be exceptional. That's guaranteed by this program. What's not guaranteed is that you'll survive being exceptional. That part is on you." She paused. "Questions?" They had dozens. About the training, about Black Hollow Pass, about how to recognize good units versus bad ones, about what to do when command fails you. Elena answered them all with the hard-earned wisdom of someone who'd learned every lesson through blood and cold and impossible shots. At the end of the session, a young sergeant approached. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. I almost dropped out of Phase 1, not because I couldn't handle the training, but because I was afraid of becoming too different, too isolated. Your story, it makes me want to stay, to see this through." Elena looked at him, saw herself 3 years ago, scared, talented, trying to figure out how to survive being exceptional. "Then stay," she said. "Finish the program. Become the weapon you're capable of being, but also stay human. Stay connected. And when you find the right team, hold on to them. Because the mission is important, but the people you do it with matter more." He nodded, saluted, walked away with purpose. Elena watched him go, felt something settle that had been restless since the day she'd left Ghost Unit. This was where she belonged. Not in the field, at least not right now, but here, helping others navigate the path she'd barely survived, making sure the next generation of exceptional soldiers had what she'd never had, guidance from someone who understood. 1 year after Black Hollow Pass, Elena received a letter. It was from Lieutenant Marks. He was serving his 12-year sentence at Fort Leavenworth, working in the prison library, attending therapy, trying to become someone who could live with what he'd done. The letter was simple. Sergeant Voss, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I think about what I did every single day, about the soldier I was supposed to be versus the coward I became. I've spent this year reading everything I can about leadership, about integrity, about what it means to actually protect the people under your command instead of destroying them to protect your ego. What I did to you was attempted murder. The court was right. I deserve this sentence. But I also want you to know that if I could go back, if I could have one chance to make different choices, I would. I would listen to your warnings. I would value your skills. I would be the leader you deserved. I can't change the past. But I can make sure that when I'm eventually released, I never make the same mistakes again. That I never let ego and fear turn me into someone who hurts the people I'm supposed to protect. You were right about everything, the valley, the threat, the mission, and you were right about me. I was a coward. I still am, in many ways, but I'm trying to be better. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found a team that deserves what you can do. And I hope that someday, maybe decades from now, you'll be able to think about what happened without hating me. That's probably too much to hope for. But hope is one of the few things they can't take away. Michael Marks. Elena read the letter 3 times, felt complicated things she didn't have names for. Not forgiveness, that was still too far away, might always be too far away. But something like understanding, like acknowledgement that people could be broken and still try to become better. She filed the letter away, didn't respond. Maybe someday she would. Maybe she'd never need to. What mattered was that she'd survived, had transformed betrayal into strength, had become not just the weapon they'd tried to erase, but the teacher who would prevent others from being erased the same way. That was enough. 2 years after Black Hollow Pass, the Enhanced Marksmanship Program graduated its first class under the new curriculum. 12 exceptional soldiers who'd learned not just how to shoot through impossible conditions, but how to survive being exceptional in a system that feared excellence. Elena stood with the other instructors, watching the candidates receive their certifications. They looked different than she had at graduation, more confident, more prepared, more aware of the challenges ahead. Colonel Reeves approached. "Hell of a job, Master Sergeant. These soldiers are ready for whatever comes next." "They're ready to be weapons, sir. Whether they're ready to stay human while being weapons, that's something they'll have to figure out on their own." "You did." "Barely, and with a lot of trauma along the way." Elena watched the graduates celebrating. "These soldiers will do better. They have advantages I never had. Because of what you built, what you taught them." Reeves paused. SOCOM wants to expand the program. Train 50 candidates per year instead of 12. Make this a standard pipeline for precision shooters across special operations. That's ambitious. That's necessary. You proved what's possible when exceptional soldiers are properly trained and properly deployed. Now we need to scale it. He looked at her. Which means we need you to run the whole program, not just Phase 2, but the entire curriculum. Selection, training, integration, all of it. Elena felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. That's a lot of power. You've earned it. And more importantly, you'll use it wisely. You know what it's like to be destroyed by a system that doesn't understand you. You won't let that happen to the soldiers you're responsible for. No, sir, I won't. Then it's yours. Congratulations, Master Sergeant Voss. You're now the director of the Enhanced Marksmanship Program. He walked away. Elena stood watching the graduates, thinking about paths and choices and the difference between being a weapon and being the person who forges weapons responsibly. She'd started this journey as a scared scout trying to prove herself, had been broken, betrayed, nearly erased, had survived through impossible shots and colder determination. Now she was something else. Not just a survivor, not just a weapon, but a guide, a teacher. Someone who could take her own trauma and transform it into something that protected others. Captain Chen appeared beside her. "Heard about the promotion. Congratulations." "Thanks, though I'm not sure congratulations is the right word for more responsibility and longer hours." "It is when the responsibility is worth it." Chen smiled. "You know, when you first joined Ghost Unit, I wasn't sure about you. Thought you might be too damaged, too isolated, too stuck in your own head. And now? Now I think you're exactly where you need to be. doing exactly what you were meant to do. Chen paused. The offer still stands, though. Whenever you want to come back to operations, Ghost Unit will take you. I know, and maybe someday I will. But right now, this is where I belong. They stood together, watching the future generation of precision shooters celebrate their graduation, ready to face challenges that would break lesser soldiers, armed with skills and knowledge that would let them survive being exceptional. Elena had survived her own destruction and become something stronger. Now she'd make sure others could do the same. That was victory. That was purpose. That was enough. 5 years after Black Hollow Pass, Elena Voss stood on a different ridge overlooking a different valley. She was here as an observer, watching Ghost Unit execute a precision operation against a high-value target. The team moved with the same lethal efficiency she remembered, Chen still leading from the front, Rodriguez providing overwatch. They were using tactics she'd helped develop, shooting techniques she'd refined through years of teaching. The operation was textbook perfect: smooth insertion, clean execution, successful extraction. "Beautiful work," she murmured into her radio. Chen's voice came back. "Learned from the best." The compliment settled warm in Elena's chest. She'd built something that mattered, not just soldiers who could shoot, but operators who could think, adapt, survive. Who knew they were weapons, but also remembered they were human. Her radio crackled again. This time, Colonel Reeves, "Master Sergeant Voss, we've got a situation developing. New candidate for the Enhanced Marksmanship Program. Exceptional shooter. Also exceptional problem. Reminds me of someone I used to know." Elena smiled. "How bad?" "She's been written up 3 times for insubordination. Her unit commander wants her transferred. Her psych eval uses words like hypervigilant and trust issues. Sound familiar?" "Very. What's her name?" "Corporal Sarah Mitchell, 23 years old. Sniper qualified at the top of her class. Also the only woman in a unit that's made it very clear she's not welcome." Elena felt something click into place. Here was another version of herself. Another talented soldier being destroyed by a system that feared her excellence. "I'll take her," Elena said. "Send me her file. I'll handle the integration personally." "Copy that. And Voss, thank you for building something that catches these soldiers before they fall." The transmission ended. Elena stood on the ridge, looking out at the valley where another mission had been completed successfully. Thinking about the soldier who was about to arrive in her program, scared and angry and exceptional. She'd been that soldier once. Had survived being pushed off a cliff, surviving betrayal, survived being erased. Had turned impossible circumstances into impossible shots, and then turned those shots into a career teaching others to survive being weapons. She couldn't save every exceptional soldier who got thrown into units that feared them, couldn't prevent every betrayal or stop every toxic commander, but she could save some, could teach them, could give them the tools and knowledge and support she'd never had. That was worth more than any medal, worth more than any mission, worth the scars and the nightmares and the memories of cold mountain nights when the world had tried to bury her. She'd survived, and now she'd make sure others survived too. Elena Voss turned away from the valley, headed back to Fort Bragg, to her office, to the files waiting for her review, to Corporal Sarah Mitchell, who would arrive next week scared and defensive and ready to prove everyone wrong. Just like Elena had been. Just like all the exceptional soldiers who'd ever been told they were too much, too different, too dangerous to belong. She'd teach Mitchell what she'd learned the hard way, that being exceptional wasn't a flaw to fix, it was a responsibility to embrace, that the right team would value you, but first you had to survive long enough to find them. That trauma could break you or forge you, and the choice was yours. And most importantly, that when the world tried to erase you, the best revenge was becoming undeniable. Some people earn respect with words. Others earn it with the shot that changes everything. But the truly exceptional earn it by teaching others to take those shots and survive them.